Chapter 685. He probably wanted to buy some time. He had a secret agreement with Lord Donghai, hoping that the Donghai Dragon King would release the female demon and come back to help him. At the same time, the people of the lifeless immortal sect were in chaos, hoping that Lord Wei Han would lead his army back to help the vast ocean. With such a huge army unstable, he could control the array and assist the female demon to attack from the back. And naturally he could win. But now, he knew that Wei River Lord's plan had been seen through. What should he do? Qin Fengzi took a step back and turned around abruptly. He planned to look for a way out and see where he could escape to and have a higher chance of survival. But at this moment he heard a high-pitched laughter. Ayya! Hee, I'm distracted. Ayya, hee, useless thing. The voice was like a gust of chilly wind that appeared beside him and circled around him. Qin Fengzi was shocked and looked up, but there was only Li Yunxin above him, controlling his magic weapon to fight with the 5 demon generals. At this moment, the Wei River Dragon King frowned slightly. Obviously, it was hard for him to fight 5 people at the same time and control them with his mind. The voice couldn't have come from him. Then he heard the voice again. Idiot, where are you looking? Be careful not to bump into me. Qin Fengzi turned around abruptly and finally saw a faintly discernible black mist behind him. This black mist kept changing its shape as if it was about to dissipate, but it was still restrained into a ball. Sometimes there were 2 holes that looked like eyes. Sometimes there was a thin slit that looked like a mouth. Seeing that Qin Fengzi was looking at him, he quickly circled around him. You are a necromancer, hee. Since you are a necromancer, do you know that old thing Zhuji? Qin Fengzi was stunned. That old thing Zhuji? No, Taoist Zhuji. Of course he knew him. He was also a necromancer. He was already 1,300 years old. He lived in the Ruo River for a long time and stayed by his ancestor's side. What was this? Why was he here? How did he know Taoist Zhuji? After all, Taoist Zhuji was... Ayaya, seems like you know him. How is that old thing now? Did he mention me? Qin Fengzi was confused. He didn't know what this thing was and why it appeared here. But when he calmed down a little, he realized that these people might be Li Yunxin's men, now that she mentioned Taoist Zhuji and called herself this lady. A thought suddenly flashed through her mind, and she remembered something. He widened his eyes and pointed at the black mist. You are. Goddess Penglai. The black fog laughed shrilly. Oh, ha, you're quite smart. Did that old thing mention me? Qin Fengzi opened his mouth. He looked at Li Yunxin in the sky, and then looked at the black fog. He mentioned it before. Of course, he knew the so-called goddess Penglai. He also knew about the 9 female fairies, including goddess Ingzhou, Fanghu, goddess Vast Expanse, Qichuan Matriarch, and Rosy Cloud's mystic fairy. These 9 were the 9 sea lords who had ruled the 9 seas 1,000 years ago. It was said that their territories were much larger than the 9 dragon kings today, and their power even extended to the land. As for Taoist Zhuji, he was a talented necromancer who was loved by the ancestor. Different from Qin Fengzi, although he was good at arrays, his cultivation was also very high, and he was a rare mystic realm necromancer. But because of an affair, he angered the ancestor and was taken back to Ruoshui. Now many years had passed, and he was gradually forgiven by the ancestor, but he rarely came to the sea. As for the affair that year, the other party involved was this goddess Penglai. More than 1,000 years ago, people from the lifeless immortal sect also lurked in the 9 seas. At that time, Taoist Zhuji was in his prime, but he had already reached the true state, and he was lurking in Penglai Island. Normally, a demon cultivator of the true state wouldn't have anything to do with the Lord of Penglai. However, besides being good at arrays and extremely smart, Taoist Zhuji had another hobby. He loved delicious food. It was said that when he was young, he tried to travel around the world and taste all kinds of delicious food. Among the 9 female immortals, 2 of them also had this hobby. One was goddess Penglai, and the other was fairy Rosy Clouds. Since Taoist Zhuji was with goddess Penglai, the 2 of them had a lot to talk about. The cultivators in the lifeless immortal sect were different from those in the Xianmen. They didn't need to forsake any desires or pass any tribulations. Therefore, the two of them actually had feelings for each other. The ancestor knew about this, but he didn't interfere. Logically speaking, if this went on, it might become a good story. However, Taoist Juji loved goddess Punglai so much that he told her a big story. He told her that there were many people in the 9 seas who were from the immortal sect. He lost his mind because of love, and the ancestor was naturally furious. He sent people to arrest him and forged his seal. He only said that he wanted to cultivate to a higher realm, so he had to cut off this love. After this happened, before goddess Punglai had time to make trouble, the 9 seas changed masters 1,000 years ago happened. Therefore this love was left unsettled. The atmosphere in the lifeless immortal sect was relatively open. Many people knew about Taoist Juji. Some were disdainful, some were indifferent, and some were sad. Qin Fengzi might be in between the latter two. Now that he heard the black fog talking about it, he suddenly remembered. Just as these thoughts popped up in his mind, he saw the black fog approaching him abruptly and said through gritted teeth, "Mentioned it before? Ha, ha, ha. What did that old thing say? Ha, what did he say?" In the time it took for the two to exchange a few words, Li Yunqin had forced back another wave of demon generals. However, this time, he lost 4 magic treasures. The demon power provided by the great formation of the demon army was getting stronger and stronger, so the demon generals were getting more and more difficult to deal with. At first, he easily forced back 3 profound realm demon generals with a purple gold coiling dragon staff. But now, because of the great formation of the army, he had to use 4 magic treasures to force back 5 true realm demon generals. However, Qin Fengzi couldn't help. It was like a fight between several huge beasts. What could an ant like him do? But while the two were talking on the stone pillar, Li Yunqin was distracted and glanced at them. He just glanced at them and didn't say anything. Qin Fengzi was sure that this goddess Punglai was on the Dragon King's side. So he froze for a second and said, "What did he say?" The black fog almost reached his face, and the sharp voice almost broke his eardrums. Qin Fengzi didn't know what goddess Punglai's cultivation level was now, but he knew about her reputation. Hearing her shout, he hurriedly said, "Taoist Juji and I are friends," he said once. He said he had no choice, and he still regretful after all, he was our ancestor. The black fog swirled and suddenly retreated a little. "Ha, Aya, it's true, he old ancestor. Old thing, this queen knew it was him." She laughed as she spoke, looking very scary. Seeing her like this, Qin Fengzi subconsciously retreated a little. But this female monster had a strange personality. One breath ago, she was gritting her teeth, and the next breath later, she suddenly changed her tone and seemed to be proud of herself. Good. Every debt has its debtor, hee. That old thing did something, so don't blame me for hurting him. Hee. Good. Qin Fengzi was also a smart person. Goddess Punglai said that he was distracted, and her tone was full of disdain. Now she said that she hurt him. Thinking quickly, his eyes suddenly brightened. "What did you do?" This question was filled with complicated emotions. He was a member of the lifeless immortal gate, so he naturally hoped that the immortal gate would succeed. But now that he was in danger, he hoped that goddess Punglai's words were true. She did something and caused some accidents, so that Li Yunqin would have something to rely on. He didn't know what goddess Punglai's personality was like in the past. But now this goddess seemed to be muddle-headed because her spirit was incomplete. Therefore, she didn't seem to be scheming, and just said what she thought. Then he heard her laugh again in a high-pitched voice. "Hee, the things you guys have done, hee. Do you think I don't know? Lurking in the 9 seas army. You want to cause trouble?" Li Yunqin is stupid. He didn't ask me about these things. Humph, it's because I'm afraid of dying here with him. Jump out and tell him. You want to ask me what I did? Hee. There is a formation in the vast sea. How can I not know? Now that he is surrounded. I know about this, I've already told my sisters. Hee. Let them make the first move. Ha. Won't it be chaos? Chaos. Ha. That old thing is so anxious to see you guys in a mess. He is so anxious. Hee. This goddess Punglai's words were incoherent. But Qin Fengzi was a smart person. He already understood what was going on. So, it was like this. No wonder he felt that something was wrong. Previously, when the three Dragon King came to meet up with Lord Vast Sea, the four necromancers gathered together, and Qin Fengzi received a message from the Immortal Gate. It said that the Vast Sea formation would be activated within a month, and they were told to make preparations. This meant that even if the lifeless immortal sect made their move, it would be a few days later. They would have plenty of time to prepare and retreat safely. But after only about an hour, Lord Vast Sea suddenly ordered people to search for them. Just now, from the conversation between Li Yunqin and the Vast Dragon King, he knew that the people from the Vast Sea and the three immortal mountains had made their move. But wasn't this the same as betraying those who were still lurking in the army? But the situation was urgent. He didn't think too much. Only now, after hearing Goddess Penglai's words, did he realize what was going on. Just like what this goddess said, she seemed to know that the lifeless immortal sect had set up a formation in the Vast Sea. But after the change of the 9 seas, she didn't have the chance to say it. But she held a grudge against the elder ancestor, and now she was tied to Li Yunqin. Listening to her words, she must have secretly sent a message to someone and asked those people to instigate the people in the immortal sect to rise up in advance. In fact, she might have sent a fake edict. Chapter 686. In this way, the matter would be exposed in advance, and many people from the immortal sect like him would be hunted down. It could be said that the immortal sect's plan would be ruined. Qin Fengzi was startled. He thought that maybe the ancestors' plan in the 9th sea would be thwarted. Then, he was delighted. Since Goddess Penglai did this, didn't it mean that Li Yunqin had prepared something? Thinking of this, he said subconsciously, "Then you, how did you do it?" The black fog suddenly turned into a vague human figure, and he could vaguely see her face. She stared at him and said, "How did I do it?" I'm not dead, so there are others who are alive. You stupid things. Do you know the origins of this queen and my sisters? But after saying that, he suddenly stopped and hurriedly looked at Li Yunqin. It seemed that she had said something she shouldn't, and was afraid that he would hear it. But Li Yunqin had defeated the 9th wave of demon soldiers, and even moved forward 3 steps, so he had no time to be distracted. The female monster was relieved. But Qin Fengzi knew that it was not a good thing for him to move forward 3 steps. It meant that it was getting more and more difficult for him to control the magic treasure with his mind, so he had to move forward. Goddess Penglai didn't want to tell him how she passed the message, and how she did it, so he asked something else. Then, "Dragon King, do you have any way?" Goddess Penglai sneered. "Way? He has a lot of ways. After he cleans up all of you idiots. 9 seas will be mine. Give some to that little bitch Fong Hu. Give some to that little bitch Ying Zhou too. Not Chu Liao's, not Chu Liao's." Qin Fengzi frowned, and looked up at Li Yunqin in the sky. At this moment, the vast army on the sea was getting noisier and noisier, and their momentum was getting bigger and bigger. But Li Yunqin was having a hard time, and he might be able to hold on for another 2 hours at most. He really couldn't figure out what else the Dragon King of the continent could do. According to the Dragon King, he had always hoped that the entire vast army would attack. That was why he spread the news to the army and sow discord, making them think that the lifeless immortal sect was going to rise up. Moreover, with the help of Goddess Penglai, the people of the immortal sect did rise up in a hurry. Thus, the Dragon King achieved his goal. Lord Vast Expanse couldn't wait any longer, and led his army to attack. From this point alone he had achieved his goal. But, he had fallen into such a situation. The demoness that he wanted to rely on could not be released by the East Sea Army, because of the changes in the celestial sect. Wasn't he cutting off one of his arms? Furthermore, he was heavily injured. It was also strenuous for him to defend. Qin Fengzi suddenly frowned. He realized that he and everyone else in the army seemed to have overlooked an obvious problem. He was seriously injured. When Li Yunqin came to the East Sea from the mainland, someone had been paying attention to him. He had met Lord Donghai twice, and there were also people around him who passed messages. At that time, Li Yunqin was full of vitality and lively. He and the demoness had defeated more than 10,000 people of the allied army on the sea. At that time, he wasn't injured, and instead, He defeated the allied army and made them retreat. After that, until the Purple Knight Immortal went to meet him, Li Yunxin didn't fight with anyone else. But inexplicably, he was seriously injured. And according to the Purple Knight Immortal, his injury was extremely serious, and it even hurt his spirit. The demons of the mystic realm were already difficult to deal with, not to mention that he was a mystic realm dragon son with a precious treasure. He had fought with the vast expanse army, and now he was still unharmed after taking on the rolling knife array, who could seriously injure him and hurt his spirit. But no one had thought about this before. For the vast expanse army, it was a good thing that Li Yunxin was seriously injured. They wanted him to vomit blood with every step he took. He was already so difficult to deal with when he was seriously injured. If it were in the past, he would be even more difficult to deal with. Qin Fengzi didn't think about it before. But now, because he was a necromancer, he suddenly realized that some powerful arrays needed one's own essence and blood to form them. He hadn't figured out what Li Yunxin's 50-kilometer array was for. With such a vast array, there must be a big plan. Before, it was also him who advised the vast expanse army not to attack rashly before figuring out the power of the array. After that, he sent people to test it, and the array showed some magical powers. For example, severely injuring the Purple Knight Taoist master, summoning those astonishingly powerful archers, and dozens of strange demons. If these were the functions of the array, it would make sense. It was already amazing that one person could kill thousands of soldiers in the vanguard. But it was the array set up by Li Yunxin. Judging from Goddess Penglai's tone, he had another move. So the next move was in this array? Thinking of this, Qin Fengzi's eyes brightened. He used to set up arrays at the bottom of the sea. Because the terrain at the bottom of the sea was undulating, it could hide many things. A reef or a clump of coral could be an unobtrusive array. It was like setting up an array in a mountain on the land. Unless someone sensed it, flew up to the sky, saw the whole terrain, and deduced along the flow of spiritual energy, they would not be able to realize that there was an array here. But Li Yunxin's array was on the sea and had no cover, so he could see everything clearly. In that case, were all his previous means and the power shown by the formation, just like the mountains on land, a smokescreen? Was this the effect of the array to make people think that he and the vast expanse army were like this? That was why the vast expanse army dared to break into the array. Because of his previous probing, he believed that he already knew what this formation was for. Qin Fengzi took a deep breath and turned to look at Goddess Penglai. Is it this array? What array is it? The female monster stared at him and screamed. Why are you asking this? Bah! Are you going to tell on me? Qin Fengzi said hurriedly. No, I was just thinking. I'm just thinking, hee. Is this all Li Yunxin has up her sleeve? Meanwhile, North Sea Dragon King stroked his long beard in the center array and sighed with a smile. Then Lord Vast Expanse. I was deceived by him for a long time. Ha ha ha. No matter who it was, they would be happy to see Li Yunxin gradually losing her strength, as she dealt with wave after wave of demon generals that attacked without rest. At this moment, the array formed by the vast expanse army began to show its power. Although the surrounding spiritual essence was disordered, there was still some usable spiritual essence. The array formed by the vast expanse army absorbed the spiritual essence bit by bit and sent it into the array formation. The amount of spiritual essence absorbed by one person might be insignificant, but the amount absorbed by more than 20,000 people was significant. It was even more impressive when more than 20,000 people absorbed the spiritual energy without stopping for even a moment. By now, the air within a radius of dozens of kilometers had turned into a faint golden color. This was a phenomenon that could only be seen in blessed paradises with extremely dense spiritual essence. But now, it was being created. In such an array formation, even a true realm demon general could exert strength close to the peak of the true realm, not to mention those in the profound realm. Li Yunxin had been fighting hard for almost an hour, and had lost dozens of magic treasures. The Dragon King knew what he had done on land. He had taken those treasures as if they were free, and then thrown them away after using them. He didn't even bother to use any incantations. But now he finally started to use incantations. A divine weapon or armor was just a sturdy weapon without incantations. Only by using the corresponding incantations could its power be doubled. Now, Li Yunqin's face was no longer as calm as before. Instead, he held his breath and focused. One of his fingers formed a sword, while the other formed an incantation. He controlled the dozen or so shining weapons in front of him to fly up and down, and his movements were extremely beautiful. But everyone knew that the more beautiful he was, the more it meant that he was at the end of his tether. Lord Vast Expanse snorted coldly. Deceive? What deceive? If it wasn't for what happened before, would you have dared to come in? As he spoke, he glanced at Li Yunqin. Li Yunqin is no longer a threat. Now we should think about what to do. Where are the three of them? Dragon King Chu Liao was looking at the treasure knife in his hand. It was the treasure that Li Yunqin had taken from the sea when he threw it to kill the retreating demon general. He looked like he couldn't bear to part with it, and praised as he looked at it. There are many treasures in my palace, and there are a few better than this, but none of them fit me. But this one fits me. Ha ha ha, treasure, treasure. Lord Vast Expanse frowned. Useless. What kind of divine weapon or armor doesn't he have after capturing that kid? I'm asking you a question. Only then did he put down the treasure knife and said angrily, didn't I say it just now? Each of them brought a few thousand soldiers from Penglai, and they arrived very quickly. You sent dozens of scouts, but you asked me. I used to say that I, Chu Liaohai, was the most well-informed. Didn't you always say? Humph. Lord Vast Expanse didn't want to argue with him about the past. He turned to look at North Sea Dragon King. My 80,000 reinforcements will be here soon. With our combined forces, we have more than 100,000 people. With Li Yunqin in our hands, we don't have to worry about any changes, and we can wait and see how the situation develops. But I'm afraid that East Sea will mess things up. That was in the past. North Sea Dragon King, who thought that the situation was somewhat under control, waved his hand cheerfully. Now, Lord East Sea also knows that he was used by our Divine Lord. He won't do anything stupid anymore. And he can't even take care of himself to deal with that female demon. Haha, didn't you say that out of the 30,000 soldiers, more than 10,000 had already been killed by that female demon? It's fine, it's fine. Dragon King Vast Expanse thought for a while, and snorted angrily. He deserved it. At first, he planned to let that female demon attack us. When he found out that the lifeless immortal sect had rebelled, he realized that things were bad. He sent us a letter asking for help, and asked us to split our forces to attack that female demon? He can deal with it himself. Now we don't have to worry about him not doing his part. He should know that if something happens to us here, and we all die, he's finished. At this point, he sneered a few more times, as if he had vented his hatred. This request for help had been sent not long ago. Chapter 687. The betrayal of the lifeless immortal sect naturally happened on Penglai Island. The demon soldiers loyal to the East Sea Lord sent him a letter. The East Sea Dragon King, who was in a bad mood because of Shangguan Yu's hatred for him, finally realized that things were not good. Previously, he listened to Huang Guanzi. He planned to let Li Yunqin severely injure the Seven Seas Coalition army, and then profit from it. But now he realized that things were different. If the immortal sect had other terrible ideas, he already had a hard time dealing with Li Yunqin. Wouldn't he have no chance of winning if the immortal sect joined in? Different from Lord Boundless and the others. When he heard the news, his first thought was, it must be Li Yunqin's doing. Whether he admitted it or not, he was afraid of that guy. Therefore, he thought that he couldn't act according to Li Yunqin's previous plan, and had to stop Red Lady. Although they, the Dragon King of the Nine Seas, usually didn't like each other, they understood the principle of honor and loss. Previously, he schemed against the Eight, because he thought that he could get the ocean after the matter was done. But now, if they continued fighting, the ocean might really become Li Yunqin's and the lifeless immortal sects. With this idea in mind, he immediately sent troops to stop Red Lady, who went straight to Li Yunqin. But Red Lady was at the peak of the profound realm, and she knew that Li Yunqin was in danger. Once she lost her temper, how could it be easy to stop her? After a fierce battle, Nearly 10,000 of the 30,000 East Sea Army soldiers were killed, but they only injured the demon, not stopped her. Lord Boundless had to send a letter to the vast army for help, but he didn't know that although Li Yunxin was at the Shi Profound Realm, he was no easier to deal with than Red Lady. Where could the vast Dragon King find troops to help him? At any other time, he might have left. But at this moment, he didn't dare to leave, and could only grit his teeth and continue fighting the demon. They chased and fought at the same time, hoping that once they reached the vast army, they would be able to join forces and capture him. Lord Boundless and Lord Beihai had guessed his intentions. The two Dragon King had been depressed for several days. Only now did they feel slightly better. Not only did he see the Dragon King of the East Sea, who had been scheming and scheming, suffer a loss, but he also saw Li Yunxin at the end of the road. It could be said that he had vented his anger. At this time, seeing that Li Yunxin was gradually losing strength, and knowing that Lord Donghai was also in a tough battle, the four Dragon King felt unprecedentedly refreshed. Very soon, another piece of good news came. Suddenly, flags fluttered on the southern sea, and shouts shook the heavens. Upon closer inspection, who else could it be but the flag of the vast army? The 80,000 elite soldiers, who came from the vast sea as reinforcements, had also arrived. Half an hour later, several demon generals stood in front of Lord Boundless. The general leading the troops knelt on one knee and said in a deep voice, reporting to the Lord, "Our army has 81,600 soldiers, and the actual number is 74,900. Fortunately, we did not disappoint you." The Dragon King frowned slightly. What about the rest? Along the way, the lifeless immortal sect cultivators rebelled. Quelling the rebellion took some time. 112 soldiers died in battle, and 23 were injured or killed. The rebels were all executed, and their leader was captured, awaiting the Lord's judgment. Lord Boundless' expression became slightly better. He even looked a little pleased with himself. He glanced to his left and right. Usually, the 9 Dragon Kings on the sea were of equal status. But in the current situation, with the vast army here, the 3 Dragon Kings, Beihai, Chuliao, and Qi Chuan, were more like his subordinates. These 3 were quite tactful. Qi Chuan Dragon King hurriedly laughed and cupped his hands at Lord Boundless. The vast army lives up to its name, and its combat power is indeed amazing, quelling thousands of rebels, and only 100 or so casualties. This general deserves a reward. The Dragon King snorted and looked at the general. You should have arrived yesterday, but you were delayed for a day, and according to military discipline, you should be punished. But since there were changes along the way, and you also contributed to the quelling of the rebellion, there will be no reward or punishment. The general's expression didn't change, and only said in a deep voice, yes. The 3 Dragon Kings hurriedly clicked their tongues in praise, making Lord Boundless even more pleased with himself. He stood up and laughed. Since you're here, you should go and play. General of the right, you always complain that you don't have a decent opponent, but that Li Yunxin is a slippery fellow. You should also go up, and let me see who is more impressive, you or him. If I'm satisfied, I will reward you handsomely. The general of the right, who had led the reinforcements, finally showed a hint of joy on his face. He cupped his fists again. Understood. He stood up, lifted the big red cloak behind him, and turned to the generals behind him. Generals, follow me, capture that Li Yunxin alive, and present him to the Lord. After saying that, everyone left on the waves. Lord Boundless let out a long sigh of relief, and leaned back on his chair. Soldiers, have courage. Now that the entire vast army was here, this Dragon King of the vast sea could finally relax. The feeling of being surrounded by the generals was wonderful, especially in a battle that they had to win. Since the general situation had been decided, the battle with Li Yunxin was like a show. But the 4 Dragon Kings were the ones watching the show, and the one being watched probably didn't feel so good. After settling the matter with this Li Yunxin, I should send someone to probe the lifeless immortal sect. Lord Boundless Dragon King squinted his eyes, and watched as the reinforcements entered the formation, and another 70,000 people also entered the formation. He said in a low voice, now that things have come to this, with my vast army here. Those treacherous things should know that they can't control the entire ocean. With my 100,000 people, we have the confidence to negotiate with them. Let's see what they want. First, we'll say that we'll divide the ocean equally. Then we'll slowly plan. If they don't know what's good for them, my 100,000 people will show them what we're made of. Lord Beihai thought for a while, and said carefully, This about the Lord Shinryu. Lord God? Ha! Lord Boundless Dragon King sneered. Now that things have come to this, you still respect her as a Lord God? Think about all these years, good. Another wave of demon generals destroyed the divine weapon that Li Yunxin was controlling and retreated safely. Lord Boundless suddenly straightened his back and shouted, then leaned back in his chair. Think about all these years, she's been nowhere to be seen, and she's unfathomable. We all thought about her godly might from 2,000 years ago, and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. But think about now. First she colluded with the mainland's Li Yunxin, and then joined forces with the lifeless immortal sect. In order to get rid of us, she's willing to do anything. Such a Lord God. Does she still think she's the Lord God of the past? Dragon King Chu Liao frowned. Lord Halhan means to say, something happened. Lord Boundless dragged his voice, and said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, something must have happened that greatly reduced her strength, and that's why she's so afraid of us. Think about it, 1,000 years ago. I don't know what your situation was like back then, but from what I've seen, she was very strong back then, but not as strong as the rumors say. In my opinion, the current situation is even more incomparable to the past. Now that the battle has reached this point, even that whatever ancestor of the lifeless immortal sect can't sit still. Did she make a move? North Sea Dragon King frowned and thought for a while, then raised his eyebrows. Lord Boundless is right. That's why. Lord Boundless Dragon King spread out his hands. Now that I think about it carefully, it's a disaster, but also a blessing. If it wasn't for this, we'd still be living in fear. This time, CK them up. He suddenly raised his voice and shouted, then stood up excitedly. It wasn't clear if the last sentence was referring to Shinryu, or the situation in the battle. The demon generals among the reinforcements had already gone forward. A total of 9 generals, all in high spirits. They all wore bright red cloaks looking majestic. At this time, there were already more than 100,000 demon soldiers in the formation. Previously, with more than 20,000 people in the formation, the atmosphere between the sea and the sky was similar to that of an immortal's paradise. Now the spirit chi in the formation was even more dense to a terrifying degree. There were originally faint golden ripples in the air, but now the entire world had turned golden. The surface of the sea seemed to have become the bottom of the sea, but what filled it wasn't spirit chi, but spirit chi that was as dense as water. Since it was a formation, naturally there were subtle arrangements in the details. Although the spirit chi in the world was dense, it had nothing to do with Li Yunxin who was on the stone pillar. Today, this Wei River Dragon King had already changed into his third set of armor. In his hands, he had given out more than 100 divine weapons. His expression was solemn, and golden blood seeped out. His palms were slightly trembling. It was obvious that even with Dragon Sun's body, he was about to be exhausted after fighting for so long. But fortunately, the general of the right who led the reinforcements didn't seem to want others to steal his limelight. After the original wave of monster generals retreated, another wave should have come. However, halfway through he ordered them to retreat. When the 9 of them were hundreds of feet away from Li Yunxin, they stopped the 8 generals behind them. Then he rode the waves and stood still on the top. He first sized up Li Yunxin from head to toe before he laughed coldly. You must be that Wei River Dragon King. I am the right general of the vast army. Li Yunxin weakly raised the phoenix wing gilded drum in her hand and pointed it at him. Don't talk nonsense. If you want to fight, then come. The right general wasn't annoyed, instead he laughed. Oh? To be able to last so long in front of my rolling knife formation, you do have some skill. Only, I don't know if your skill is as big as your temper. He sized up Li Yunxin a few more times, pulling out an old and simple long knife from his waist. However, he didn't pounce forward. only hugging the knife in his arms and smiling faintly. I have long wanted to find an evenly matched opponent to have a good fight. Unfortunately, I am invincible in the ocean. Now that I have met you, how can I let you go so easily? How about this? I will allow you to rest for 15 minutes. Recover some of your strength, so that you can fight with me. Don't say that the vast army is bullying you. The right general spoke like Lord Houhan. His voice was loud and spread across the ocean. One had to know that Li Yunqin had charged into the formation and killed the vanguard, causing the vast army to hate him. Now that they saw that reinforcements had arrived and the situation had stabilized, they all relaxed. When they heard the right general's words, they immediately started to clamor, like the sound of gongs and drums. The old North Sea dragon saw this scene from afar and frowned slightly. This, Lord Houhan, our time is limited. I am afraid that something might happen. I think. Chapter 688. Ha ha ha. There's no hurry. The boundless Dragon King laughed and waved his hand. Let him play. Under such circumstances, Ben Jun actually likes this scene. I can vent my anger and boost the morale of the army. Besides, he snorted with a smile, I'm not boasting when I'm the general of the right. In the boundless army, no one is his match except for me. His cultivation base is in the mystical realm, and with the protection of the array, I think he's almost at the expansive mystical realm. To deal with the currently Yunqin Humph, now that he had a large army in his hands, he spoke and did things much more proudly, and his temperament was much calmer. He was no longer as panicky as before. However, the three Dragon Kings were all alone now, so the Dragon King couldn't persuade him anymore. He could only tell himself to calm down for the time being, and not say anything more. However, just as the old dragon of the North Sea sat down, he suddenly understood something. The Lord of the Boundless was neither anxious nor impatient. He probably had other plans other than letting his beloved generals fight to their heart's content and boost the morale of the army. After all, what was the situation in the ocean now? The Boundless Army was the only army. The only one that could barely be called an army was the East Sea Army. But now no one liked the East Sea Dragon King anymore. Even if they didn't argue with him, because it was not good for internal strife, no one would pay attention to him in the future. It was impossible for him to summon everyone to his Penglai Island to discuss matters, and vaguely act like he was the leader of the alliance in the ocean. When there were so many people, a leader was always needed. In the past, this leader was Shinryu, and then it might be the East Sea Lord. But now, who else but the Lord of the Boundless had the strength to take on this responsibility? Based on this thought, the Lord of the Boundless probably planned to wait for the other three Dragon Kings to arrive. Then he would capture or kill Li Yunqin in one fell swoop. Only then would his ability be shown, and people would be more willing to respect him as the leader of the alliance. At this thought, the Dragon King of the North Sea coughed. The three of them should be here soon, right? It's better for the Lord of the Boundless to wait a little longer. When the other three arrive, halfway through his words, the mighty Dragon King laughed happily. That's right. The three of them were almost there. Scouts have already reported that they are only a few hundred li away from here. He then waved his hand to summon the Lieutenant General beside him. How about the Eastern Navy? The Lieutenant General turned his head to ask the person beside him a few questions. After a slight pause he replied, My lord, it's said that it's only 400 li from here. Lord Vast Expanse frowned. So fast. What's the outcome of the battle with that Demonis? The Lieutenant General turned his head and asked a few more questions before answering. He said, The Eastern Navy was in front, and the Demonis was behind. It seems like the East Sea Army is coming our way. Escape? Lord Vast Expanse jumped up from his throne, his eyes wide. Escape? 30,000 people against one person, and the result was still escape? What happened? The Lieutenant General hurriedly turned his head and asked a few more questions behind him before kneeling down and kowtowing. Reporting to Jun Shang. Jun Shang's question just now was a coincidence. He also just received the news. The rest haven't come back yet, but there will be results soon. My lord, please rest assured. Lord Vast Expanse Dragon King turned his head and glared at the three. Escape? Did you hear that? Escape? That coward was what I said wrong. 30,000 people against one person, escape. The three Dragon Kings were also stunned and didn't know what to say. Not long ago, they had received news that the East Sea Army and the Demoness were in a stalemate, and that the Demoness was injured. Logically speaking, when an army was in a formation, the more it fought, the stronger it became. That Demoness wasn't as proficient in formations as Li Yunxin was, and she was in a hurry to help, so her spirit must be unstable. Under such circumstances, she actually escaped. It was really puzzling. They waited for a long time before someone came to report. Before the Lieutenant General could ask, Lord Vast Expanse asked the scout directly, "Speak. What happened?" The scout panted and said, "My lord, I just found out that the East Sea Army was indeed defeated and fled. However, there are still around 20,000 people, and the Demoness is chasing after them. Behind the Demoness, there is another Lu Ku, who seems to be at the peak of the profound realm. Our brothers have already lost dozens of men trying to find that person, so they don't dare to go forward. However, it looks like he is also heading in our direction." The four Dragon Kings exchanged glances. After 2 breaths, Lord Vast Expanse shouted, "Continue to scout." The scout received the order and left. North Sea Dragon King stood up. Another peak of the profound realm. He glanced at Li Yunxin and suddenly exclaimed, "Oh no, is it Li Yunxin's helper? He has been waiting for that one." Lord Vast Expanse, quickly end this battle. Lord Vast Expanse Dragon King's expression turned ugly. He took 2 steps forward and was about to speak. However, another scout dashed over and bumped into the one he had just sent out. However, he used his hands and feet to throw himself in front of the throne. However, his face didn't show any signs of panic. Instead, there was a hint of joy on his face. My lord, the one who came later is fighting with the Demoness." They were stunned. But now the 4 Dragon Kings couldn't help but be stunned again. "Tell me in detail." The scout who came later stood up and panted. "The dozens of brothers in front were all killed by the woman who came later. I was going to leave too. However, that woman caught up to the Demoness in red and started fighting after a few sentences." "Woman? It looks like a woman." The scout said, "Her cultivation is extremely high, but I can't tell how strong she is. However, she is locked in battle with the Demoness. I took advantage of the fact that they were fighting to get closer to take a look. I heard that woman call herself something. Zither Lady." North Sea Dragon King sucked in a breath of cold air. He took a step forward and exclaimed, "Did you hear it correctly?" "I didn't hear wrongly." The scout saw the Dragon King's expression and knew that he had found out something shocking. Thus he became more cautious. "I heard it twice. The first time was when the Demoness in red called her Zither Lady. The other time was when she said it herself. It was a clear title, Zither Lady." North Sea Dragon King stared at Lord Boundless. He didn't care about being pretentious anymore. "Is it the one from the continent?" "It should be. As far as we know, there are 2 people at the peak of the profound realm on the continent. One is Zither Lady, and the other is Fiend Lady. Who else could it be if not her?" Frowning, Dragon King paced back and forth anxiously. "Zither Lady, Zither Lady, Zither Lady." North Sea Dragon King became more anxious. "Lord Boundless, quickly end the battle here." However, after taking 2 more steps, the vast Dragon King raised his head and relaxed his brows. "This is an opportunity." Chu Liao Dragon King and Chi Chuan Dragon King looked at each other. Opportunity. Opportunity. Thoughts seemed to become clearer in Dragon King's mind, and his brows relaxed completely. "Don't panic. I know you'll be anxious when you hear about the Dragon Son from the continent. But think about it carefully. Isn't this a great opportunity? Think about what Li Yunxin and that Lord Boundless did at the foot of Cloudy Mountain. That Li Yunxin had killed one of the dragon princes and severely injured 2 others. And one of them was this Zither monarch. Since this Zither lady is feared by the Shinryu because of her power, and she has a grudge against Li Yunxin, why did she come to the sea this time? She's already fighting with that female demon, which means she's not here to cause trouble for us. She's here to find Li Yunxin." He suddenly sneered and rubbed his hands. Good. I originally planned to capture Li Yunqin alive and use him to threaten that female demon and deal with her temporarily. I haven't figured out how to deal with her yet. But now that Zither Lady is here, if we can convince her to temporarily ally with us, we can use her power to kill that female demon. Isn't this an opportunity? A great opportunity. North Sea Dragon King was stunned for a while and said anxiously, "But I'm afraid something might happen. After all, she's not on our side. If she's not willing to use our power." Lord Halhan sneered. "Not willing? Hee. She's a ruthless character who drove tens of thousands of demons to die at Cloudy Mountain for her own selfish desires. Does she really have any moral standing? Only this kind of person would be willing." After saying this, he made up his mind. He turned to the scout and shouted, "Go again and tell that Zither Lady that Dragon King's army is surrounding Li Yunqin. Invite her to meet him." The scout was stunned for a while. He had just reported good news and thought that he would be rewarded. Who knew that he would be asked to send a message instead of getting the reward? Zither Lady and Hong Nyangzi were both frighteningly strong monsters. If he really went to send a message, he was afraid that he would be killed by the spiritual power from the battle between the two, before he could even get within 10 miles. Just as he was hesitating, he heard North Sea Dragon King suddenly say in a low voice, "I don't think it's necessary. They are already here." The scout couldn't see. He couldn't see the demons with lower cultivation in the vast army. But the Dragon King and the demon generals could feel it. The spiritual power between heaven and earth became even more chaotic. The spiritual power between the sea and the sky was like a large net. If someone disturbed the net, it would cause vibrations. But the vibrations were strong and weak. Not everyone could feel them, but those with high cultivation could feel them now. In the northwest, about a few hundred miles away, the spiritual power between heaven and earth was stirred into a whirlpool. As a result, the spiritual energy around the vast army formation became thinner. But only a bit. It didn't have any substantial effect on the entire army. The 4 Dragon Kings released their divine sense in the direction of the change in the spiritual power, and quickly found 2 extremely powerful beings. One was slightly stronger, the other slightly weaker. The slightly stronger one was in front. The slightly weaker one was at the back. It seemed like they were chasing each other. Soon, the strange phenomenon between the sea and the sky could be seen with the naked eye. A white line was quickly moving forward. It was a huge wave that was hundreds of feet high, and so long that it stretched from north to south. The huge wave carried sand, rocks, and even magma that hadn't completely condensed in the seawater. It rushed forward with a howl. On top of the wave, there was a dazzling red light and a dazzling golden light. Every time the 2 lights collided with each other, more mud and rocks were thrown up from the bottom of the sea, and more turbulent waves were stirred up. Even the sea where Lord Boundless was started to tremble slightly, as if he would soon be swept up into the sky. As soon as the 2 lights appeared on the horizon, they heard a scream that was forced by demon power, and almost pierced through their eardrums. "Li Yunqin, go!" Chapter 689. The 4 Dragon Kings sucked in a breath of cold air at the sight of such terrifying power. But all he did was suck in a breath of cold air. The power of the peak of the profound realm was rare. The 4 Dragon Kings had only heard of the power of the demonesses in red, but none of them had seen it with their own eyes. Limited by their cultivation, they couldn't imagine what it was like to be very close to the grand supreme realm. Now that they had seen it with their own eyes, they naturally realized how powerful that power was. If the 4 of them fought one-on-one or all at once, they wouldn't be a match for either of the 2. But they weren't stupid demons on land. In fact, the sea demons had the advantages of both humans and land demons. They had both demon power and the cohesion of a mortal army. Therefore, no one was willing to fight one-on-one, unless they were on a whim, or when they had the confidence to win. The method they used to deal with Li Yunqin was an exception, but it wasn't a fight one-on-one. It was using the power of the whole army to support several people, and the power was more than doubled. Otherwise, if these East Sea soldiers were killed by a great demon in the profound realm, they would soon be defeated. Therefore, although they were surprised by the power of the 2 demonesses, they weren't afraid. This kind of momentum, could be withstood by the 100,000 soldiers who had been waiting for the enemy. Lord Howhan, on the other hand, looked happy after the shock. Good. I knew it. They all heard the demoness say go. They naturally knew that even the arrogant demoness at the peak of the profound realm felt that something was wrong and wanted Li Yunxin to escape first. But Li Yunxin had outsmarted himself. He wanted to stall the army here and wait for the demoness to attack from the front and the back. He didn't expect that his cleverness would backfire. Now that the vast army was formed, where could he go? While he was feeling happy, the rolling waves came roaring. However, the terrifying waves were neutralized by an invisible force when they were a dozen miles away from the vast army, and the waves on both sides pushed past the army, as if the entire ocean had been plowed by an invisible giant hand. The wild demon monarchs who were watching the battle suffered. They were knocked over by the terrifying force, and some of their subordinates with weaker cultivation were even injured and killed. The vast Dragon King's heart was even calmer. At this time, the two combatants were getting closer and closer, and he could barely make out their appearances. With one look, one could tell that the stronger one was Red Madam, and the weaker one was the self-proclaimed Zither monarch, Long Sun. Although they were on the sea, they had learned a lot of things on land over the years. He knew that there were 9 mediocre dragon sun on the continent, 2 of whom were at the peak of the profound realm, whose cultivation bases were even higher than those of the 9 dragon kings on the sea. However, the strength of the mainlanders was just the bravery of a common man. The Battle of Cloud Mountain was proof. Because of the suppression of the celestial sect of wonders and humans, Liu Yao had never been able to become a force of his own like the sea demons. Back at Cloud Mountain, there were so many fiendish demon armies, but in the end, they were in a state of disunity. And now this Zither monarch came alone was proof. As a dragon son who had a fief, it was ridiculous that he had no army to accompany him in a dangerous place. However, in the current situation, this dragon son could be used as a sharp sword. Although Red Madam was strong, she was chased by Zither monarch all the way. It could be seen that she was indeed anxious and worried about Li Yunxin. She must be worried that if she and Zither monarch fought on the way, Li Yunxin would be isolated and helpless. North Sea Dragon King also saw the amazing momentum of the two people and knew that their every move had the power to overturn rivers and seas. He said in a deep voice, "While that Zither monarch is still fighting with her, split up some people to form a formation to restrain her. Kill or capture her first, then we can rest easy." Chichuan Dragon King laughed. "Brother, you're wrong. If we split up the formation at this time, something might happen. It's better to let her in. She will definitely rush in to save Li Yunxin. Then we can surround the formation like an iron bucket and slowly contact that Zither monarch. Isn't that safer?" "Ha! I only heard that the first son of the dragon of the land, the third son of the dragon of the land, is the strongest. Who would have thought that he was a beauty?" North Sea Dragon King stared at him. "Lord Chichuan, you better stop that habit of yours. Be careful not to mess things up." Lord Boundless laughed. "Don't be anxious. I think Lord Chichuan is right. Wouldn't it be easier to capture her in one fell swoop?" After he said this, he did not discuss with the others and only ordered in a deep voice, "Split up. Let's see if the demoness will enter or not." North Sea Dragon King wanted to say more, but the order had already been passed down. With the sound of drums, about 10 miles in front of the two fighting demonesses, the vast army opened up a path. At this time, Boundless Dragon King shouted again, "General of the Right, keep an eye on him." The General of the Right, who was facing off against Li Yunxin, was confident that his current cultivation level was close to the realm of profound life, and there were 8 demon generals behind him. So he was distracted to see the situation in the distance clearly. Since he could lead an army, he was naturally a smart person. With just a few glances, he knew that something might have happened. Now that he heard the order of the vast army, he put down his hand and held the long saber in his hand tightly. He looked at Li Yunxin a few more times and sighed. "I originally heard that you were defending and waiting for reinforcements. But now that your reinforcements are also being pursued, you must be feeling bad. But I have a duty, so I can't let you go." Listening to that demoness cry, She is also very worried about you. And she is also very loyal to you. Sai, how about this? He slowly took 2 steps in the void, waved his saber and smiled. 3 moves. If you can force me to retreat in 3 moves, I'll let you go and tell you to run away. As for whether or not you can escape with that demoness, I can't guarantee that. After he said this, he heard Red Lady's cry from far away. Li Yunxin, go! The previous cry was considered a stern shout. But when it came to this voice, it sounded a little hopeless. It must be because there was an opening in the vast army that the demoness had seen the situation inside the array. Knowing that Li Yunxin was also blocked, it would be very difficult for him to escape. At this moment, she was fighting with Zither Monarch outside the formation, pacing back and forth. Although her strength was higher than Zither Monarch, who had been seriously injured before, she was at a disadvantage. It was extremely difficult to determine the outcome of a battle between demons and demons at the peak of Profound Realm in a short time. But Zither Monarch could do her best. But she still had to hold back from time to time, so that when Li Yunxin began to break out, she would have the means to support him. As a result, this demoness, who had been invincible since she came to the ocean, gradually showed a sorry state at this moment. But Li Yunxin inside the formation, he seemed to know that he was at the end of the road and had lost all hope. At least in the eyes of the right general. He turned a deaf ear to Red Lady's 2 warnings. Previously, he was holding a weapon and asking the demon general to fight. But now seeing Red Lady's appearance, it seemed that his last breath had dissipated. He also sighed and casually threw the weapon in his hand into the sea. Ignoring the general of the right's words, he said in a weak but clear voice, "Little Yuer, forget it. I have a general here who is very capable and very arrogant, so I can't leave. Leave by yourself, don't come in. If you come in, I'm afraid it will be difficult for you to get out." When the 2 demonesses were chasing after her, Red Lady could use her abundant demon power to gain the upper hand. But now that they were fighting, Zither Monarch's power was slowly revealed. She was born a demon at the peak of the Profound Realm, and it had been as long as 2,000 years. In such a long time, her understanding and control of this powerful power was far better than Red Lady, who had just obtained this power and couldn't completely master it. When Li Yunxin's words reached her ears, Red Lady was shocked and stunned. At that moment Long Sun, who was at the peak of the Profound Realm, finally found an opportunity, and with an incomparably sharp demon power, he hit the demoness Golden Palace acupoint. Just this one attack suddenly blasted her dozens of feet away, causing her to spit out golden blood all over the sky. Seeing this scene, not only was the army in an uproar, even Lord Howhan suddenly stood up and shouted, "Good! Zither Monarch's strength is not in vain." The right general squinted his eyes and looked at Li Yunxin, then pulled the long saber in his hand. "Your female companion seems to have feelings for you. Lord Wei River, if I were you, I wouldn't be able to sit still and fight to the death. Are you coming? If you don't come, I think she will be in trouble." But Li Yunxin just sighed in a low voice. "Little Yuer, you don't owe me anything. Why do you want to die for me? These bastards opened a hole in the array and stopped me from leaving. They want to force you to come in and die with me. If you come in, I might not appreciate your kindness. If you leave, I won't blame you. You'd better leave now." Hearing his words, the right general squinted his eyes and looked at him carefully. "Tiske, Lord Wei River, if you really want me to leave, why don't you just surrender or kill yourself? What you said makes it even harder for me to leave." "Ha! This is not what a hero would do." Before he finished speaking, he suddenly heard a series of golden drum sounds. The right general knew that they were about to close the array. Turning around, he saw the demoness in red rushing through the hole, heading straight for the stone pillar. He shook his head, looking a little dispirited. "Stupid woman. This is not fun. But the Lord should be happy. Li Yunxin, it seems that I don't have a chance to fight with you. Goodbye." He knew that his mission was completed. Although he felt a little regretful that he couldn't capture Li Yunxin alive, he knew that the demoness was coming, and he was no match for her. Since he was a general leading the army, he naturally acted decisively. He waved his cloak, turned around, and was about to return to the army with a cold snort. However, something strange happened at this time. He saw Li Yunqin move his fingers from the corner of his eyes, so the aura around him suddenly stagnated. It was as if the spiritual power in his body was suddenly separated from this body, and he couldn't use it at all. The demon general subconsciously groaned and reached for his saber. However, the saber was in his hand, but he couldn't feel it. He didn't even have time to feel fear. He only felt a chill climb up his spine. He heard Li Yunqin sigh. "You talk too much. Then don't leave." Chapter 690. He hears the female monster's panicked voice coming from afar. "I will stop them and kill our way out." He also hears the 8 monster generals not far away whispering, "General, it's time to retreat." These 3 sentences come into his ears almost at the same time. But in his consciousness, this extremely short time becomes extremely long. He suddenly realizes one thing. Maybe this is the place where he is going to die. The next moment, Red Lady rushes to him. The monster general is standing on her side. This female monster waves her hand, and the monster general's body explodes into a pool of blood, splashing all over the 8 monster generals behind him. The 8 people are inexplicably shocked, but they dare not wait any longer. They immediately scatter like birds and beasts, no longer as majestic as when they came. Red Lady is about to send these 8 people on their way, but she hears Li Yunqin whispering, "Don't chase them." His voice, it sounded like he didn't have any strength. But it's not the slightly desperate and decadent feeling he had when he shouted before. Instead, he is somewhat calm and at ease. Because of his words, the demoness was stunned for a moment. Finally, the 8 of them escaped far away. Red Lady originally wears a big red robe, but now the red robe is torn into pieces. Obviously, she has suffered a lot in the previous battle. She comes here almost as fast as lightning. She wants to save Li Yunqin, and then fight their way out of the encirclement. However, now she finally sees Li Yunqin's face. She suddenly realizes that things may not be what she thinks. Li Yunqin looks at her and smiles. "I thought you would definitely change after you got the dragon soul. Now it seems that you are still the Li Xinyuan Dongting." Red Lady frowns. She glances at the vast army in the distance, and then at Li Yunqin shouting, "What are you doing? Why are you stopped by such a person? Why don't you go?" Li Yunqin suddenly steps back and falls back on the stone pillar. "Take your time, don't rush." Red Lady stares at him. "Go now. Otherwise, if Zitherjun joins them, she is an accident. But I am happier." Li Yunqin interrupts her softly. "I come to see your injury." Red Lady was taken aback. Worry and anxiety froze on his face. Then she slowly frowned. "You, come." Li Yunqin waved his hand. "I still have to apologize to you." The moment the right general's body exploded, the joy on Lord Vast Expanse's face froze. Then he frowned and cried out involuntarily, "What?" But at this moment, the Dragon King of the North Sea whispered, "Let's not bother about that first. Lu Ku is here." After Red Madam rushed into the formation because of her overt plot, Zither Master, who was fighting with her, stopped pursuing her. Clearly, he knew how powerful this formation was. However, he didn't hesitate at all. With a turn of his body, he headed straight for the place with the densest number of flags. All he did was retract the extremely powerful aura on his body, which could be considered as indicating that he was not going to be an enemy for the time being. Since Lu Ku was so bold and unrestrained, the 4 Dragon King couldn't be timid, even though they were still discussing how to contact Zither Master. But now, seeing that his leading general was casually killed by that demoness, Lord Vast Expanse was inexplicably shocked. That demoness, was she so powerful? She could crush a great demon, whose demonic power was close to the profound expanse realm with a casual strike. Then, how powerful was this Zither Master who had fought with her for a long time, and even seriously injured her? This kind of power seemed to be somewhat beyond his expectations. After the Dragon King of the North Sea reminded him, Zither Master had already stopped outside the central army. At this time, she was no longer moving around in the air like lightning, but everyone could see her appearance clearly. She had a beautiful face. She wore a fur collar cloak. Her hair was combed neatly, making her look like a chivalrous woman. Her expression was solemn and cold. She frowned and shouted, "Who is in charge here?" She skipped a lot of formalities. She was even a little rude. This was slightly different from the Zither Master that the 4-Dragon King had investigated. It was said that Dragon Big Cheonyo had always been gentle and calm, only showing his ruthless methods when necessary. But now she looked like this, as if she was extremely impatient. At this time, the 8 demon generals who had escaped had already returned to the formation. Lord Vast Expanse had to temporarily suppress his doubts and deal with Zither Master first. He calmed himself down and stood up from the throne. He took a few steps and rode the wave forward, while the 3 Dragon Kings followed closely behind. Thus, the army in front of him parted to make a path for them, looking very imposing. The wave sent him several feet away from Zither Master before Lord Vast Expanse said in a deep voice, "Friends from the land. You want to kill Li Yunxin, don't you?" Zither Master seemed to have no patience for his pleasantries. "If you want to kill him, why are you surrounding here?" Her tone was unkind and seemed to be full of resentment. In private, the Dragon King might have probed further. But now they were in the army. As the commander of the army, how could he tolerate such impoliteness? His face darkened. "Friends from the land. How I kill him, and when I kill him is none of your business." North Sea Dragon King saw that the situation was not good, and hurriedly stepped forward with a smile. "Guest, please don't be impatient. You have come from afar and don't know the situation here. I don't have the patience to listen to your situation." Zither Master looked at him coldly. "I only came to kill Li Yunxin." As she said this, her tone softened a little. It seemed that the anger from the fight with Red Lady had also subsided. "If you want to kill Li Yunxin, I can help you. He has many treasures on him. You can rest assured. I don't want any of them." North Sea Dragon King continued to smooth things over. "Guest, you are a straightforward person. Lord Howhan need not be angry. About this, why don't we sit down and talk? Guest, you can see that Li Yunxin is surrounded by us like an iron bucket. He can't escape even if he has wings. You have lived on the land for a long time, so you probably don't know much about the ocean." Zither Master's brows finally relaxed a little. She looked at the 4 Dragon Kings, and finally looked at the Vast Dragon King. "She used to forbid us from coming to Dragon Island, and she doesn't like us coming to the sea. So you people are hiding on the sea. I heard on the way that you also call yourselves the Dragon King of the Sea. Do you know what you and our Lord Shinryu are thinking?" Lord Howhan smiled coldly. "Zither Master doesn't know about us, but we know about you. We also know that Li Yunxin has turned the land upside down, and now he has come to the sea to cause trouble. As for that person's thoughts, I don't need Zither Master to remind me. She has already joined hands with the lifeless immortal sect on the ocean, and wants to use Li Yunxin to bury us together. Fortunately, the heavens have not forsaken me, and now that kid has been caught." Speaking up to this point, he narrowed his eyes. "Wait until we capture this kid alive, and understand some things. Then we will discuss it in detail with them. But since you are a straightforward person, I will also be straightforward. After we ask that Li Yunxin, we can naturally hand him over to you. But before that, I don't need Zither Master to worry about how to dispatch our troops, and when to kill him. If you are impatient, I can let you enter the formation, and you can fight against Li Yunxin and that female demon. But I'm afraid it will be difficult to determine the winner in a short period of time. I believe Zither Master has already experienced Li Yunxin's methods. Don't you have our formation?" His tone wasn't very good either. North Sea Dragon King was afraid that this aggressive Lu Ku would get angry again, and was about to speak. But he saw Zither Master suddenly smile. Although it was a cold smile, this smile made Chi Chuan Dragon King stunned for a moment, and his eyes became fervent. "So you also know about Li Yunxin's past." She took 2 steps forward in the air. Thus, the 4 Dragon King heard light sounds of armors clashing. These soldiers had seen the scene of the battle between the 2 demons, and knew that this person in front of them was powerful. Now that she was about to step forward, they subconsciously tightened their grip on their weapons. If it wasn't for the vast army's strict military discipline, perhaps someone would have already attacked. But Zither Master didn't care. After taking a few more steps, she said, "Since you should understand that to deal with people like him, the first thing to do is to kill him immediately. You must not give him any time to prepare, delay, or even give him a chance to speak. I'm afraid that if you delay any longer." When she stopped, she was still outside of Li Yunxin's formation, but she was already very close. Now that she had taken a few steps, she finally stepped into the formation. Thus, when she said this, her expression suddenly changed, and she stopped talking. The four Dragon King were stunned. They saw Zither Master let out a soft huh sound, and then frowned slightly. "No, this formation here." Lord Howhan smiled. "Formation? Of course there is a formation. Other than our formation, that Li Yunxin also set up a formation. What you said is the truth. Previously, our army was indeed delayed by Li Yunxin for a few days. It turns out that he was relying on this formation, waiting for the demon you chased to come back to help. But now, his plan had come to nothing. Haha, what he can do on land, he may not be able to do on the sea. Zither Master," he dragged out his voice, "I know your realm is high, but when it comes to overall planning and arranging troops, I'm afraid you need to learn more from us." But Zither Master only frowned, as if she was trying to remember something. Seeing that Lord Howhan was about to anger her again, North Sea Dragon King hurriedly changed the topic. "Ah, this Zither Master. How did you know that Li Yunxin is here?" "Of course I found out his whereabouts and chased after him." She was thinking hard, so she casually answered. But she quickly raised her head. "His formation is strange." "It should be. Strange there is." Sichuan Dragon King finally interrupted, his tone more gentle than Lord Howhan and Lord North Sea, as if he was chatting up a beauty he met on the side of the road, or as if he couldn't wait to present a treasure. "I want Zither Master to know that the vast army suffered a lot a few days ago. But it's not Lord Howhan's fault for not being good at commanding. It's just that his formation is strange. One person killed thousands of people. Aya. Luckily we turned the tide and forced him into a desperate situation. Zither Master, you don't need to worry now. He's at his wit's end." Chapter 691. Lord Howhan glared at him, and this Sichuan Dragon King stopped talking awkwardly. However, his words did not seem to calm the heart of the beauty in his eyes. She tilted her head and thought for a while before saying, "No." But at this moment, another army appeared in the north. The fluttering banners were at the border of the sea, and the dull sound of drums could be heard. The Dragon Kings turned around at the same time. North Sea Dragon King whispered, "It's Lord Donghai." Lord Howhan said coldly, "When he was in the palace on Penglai Island, he said he would stop the demonists. But in the end he planned to plot against us with Li Yunxin. He released the demonists and Zither Lady. If I were him, I would be too ashamed to escape to the mainland. But this one still has the face to come." North Sea Dragon King took a closer look. Not just him. There are also the banners of South Sea, Bulging Sea, and Dayang Sea. It seemed like they had merged together. He felt guilty. That's why he came with them. Who knows? He might have even gone to help him along the way, and asked them to watch over him, to make up for his mistake. His mistake is unforgivable. I'll ask him when he comes. Boundless Dragon King's face was gloomy. He only glanced at Qin Jun. Then he turned around and returned to the carriage, leaving her there. North Sea Dragon King and Chuliao Dragon King nodded at her and followed Lord Howhan. Sichuan Dragon King took a step forward and then back. He thought for a while and said to Zither Lady with a smile, "They are busy, but we shouldn't be neglecting you. I've heard a lot about you, Zither Lady. Let me accompany you." What is Zither Lady thinking about? But Zither Lady only glared at him and retreated even further. Sichuan Dragon King blinked and cupped his hands in front of his chest. Okay. Take your time to think about it, take your time." The flag of the East Sea Army fluttered, and they soon arrived at the front of the vast army. The four people in front were the four Dragon Kings of East Ocean, South Ocean, North Ocean and Great Ocean. Lord Vast and the other two had planned to watch Lord Donghai come to beg for forgiveness. Who would have thought that at this moment, wasn't the dignified man in the lead the Dragon King of the East Sea? On the other hand, the other three Dragon Kings stood by his side, and their statuses seemed to be similar to the two behind the vast Dragon King. Lord Vast Expanse was stunned. While he was distracted, the man who made him gnash his teeth in hatred rode the wave and walked forward. He cupped his hands and said, "Knowing that all my brothers are safe and sound, I feel much more at ease." Lord Howhan glared at him. "You. Fine, fine, fine." He was so angry that he laughed. "Look at you now, don't you have anything to say to us?" Lord Donghai looked calm. He looked at him and said in a low voice, "Lord Howhan, do you want me to beg for forgiveness? What would happen after he apologized? Are you going to fight with me? Or do you want me to hand over the East Sea Army?" This guy, when he asked questions, he was even more confident than Lord Howhan. Lord Vast Expanse was stunned again. If you want to throw a tantrum, wait until we get through this." Lord Donghai frowned. "I know what you want to say. I also dared to take responsibility for my actions. Previously, I was blinded by greed. I wanted to join hands with Li Yunxin to harm you guys, so that I could monopolize the power of the ocean. But at that time, I thought that Shinryu summoned Li Yunxin to replace us. He promised me Shinryu's guarantee, so I made up my mind and did it. That was indeed my intention. I'm sorry to all of you." He spoke quickly and anxiously, and his words were loud and clear, not giving Lord Vast Expanse any chance to interject. At this point he cupped his hands again. "After this period of time, I won't say a word about how you guys want to deal with me. But now, the lifeless immortal sect has changed, and I also know that we've all fallen into the trap of Shinryu, 10,000-year ancestor, and Li Yunxin. At this time, even if I have 1,000 regrets in my heart, I have to hold on, work together with everyone to resolve the crisis before us. Lord Vast Expanse, if you want to question me, I'll confess. But now isn't the time to question me." Lord Vast Expanse stared at him and opened his mouth. He wanted to curse, but he just couldn't. It wasn't that he had nothing to say, but there was too much to curse. Shameless to the extreme. He finally caught his breath and pointed at Lord Vast Expanse, his finger trembling slightly. Good, you have a damn sharp tongue. I've never been able to outtalk you. Fine. I won't argue with you now, but your problem is your problem. King wanted to harm us. And now you've brought an army. Water must have gotten into my brain. Would I let your people in just like that?" Behind Lord Vast Expanse, South Sea Dragon King hurriedly said, Lord Vast Expanse, don't be angry, listen to me. This Lord Vast Expanse has already handed over the commander's seal and flag to us. He's already removed his military authority. Lord Vast Expanse Dragon King wanted to question him, but he ended up punching cotton. Now that he heard this, it was more than punching cotton. He was punching himself again. He stared at Lord Vast Expanse, then at Lord Vast Expanse and said, What did you say? Lord Vast Expanse Dragon King sighed. First he took out a large gilded seal from his sleeve, then a small colorful flag. Sigh, look. The seal and the flag are all in our hands. I say, Lord Vast Expanse, let's get through the current crisis first. Then we can slowly settle the score. Lord Vast Expanse also sighed and said in a low voice, The situation now, forget it. How could Lord Vast Expanse agree? He almost jumped up in anger. It was not that he had to kill Lord Donghai on the spot. If the bastard came to him crying and begging for forgiveness, he would give him a good scolding and let it go for the time being. He would settle the score with him after this incident was over. But what was happening now? Instead, it seemed like the Dragon King of the East Sea was a righteous man who was magnanimous and considerate of his brothers? This was simply Motherf asterisk Kerr, Motherf asterisk Kerr, Motherf asterisk Kerr. He flew into a rage and shouted, I'm also worried about you. Leave your soldiers and you, get out of here. Lord Vast Expanse shook his head and sighed in a low voice. If I wanted to leave, I would have left long ago. But since this disaster can be said to have arisen because of me, I have to do my part. You guys have been unable to encircle Li Yunxin, so I'm afraid you guys will make mistakes here. He slowly took out a dazzling golden ball from his sleeve. The mist in the ball was faintly discernible. Li Yunxin's birth mother is with me. I will use his birth mother to tempt him to surrender. If he surrenders without a fight, It can also atone for my sins." As he said this, the dragon kings behind him sighed again and again as if they couldn't bear it. Even Lord Vast Expanse, who was furious, stopped shouting immediately. He frowned and stared at the golden ball for a while to make sure that there was indeed a person inside. He stared at Lord Vast Expanse for a while and said after a long time, "Inside, is that Madame Mingyue?" His tone was much softer. It was like a vigorous flame suddenly extinguished into embers. But no one thought this change was strange. Although the dragon kings on the ocean fought openly and covertly, they didn't come and go frequently. But they weren't like the dragon sun on land, who was separated by thousands of mountains and rivers. After living together for 1,000 years, they knew each other's temperament. For example, this Lord Vast Expanse, he was a lover. This kind of thing couldn't be faked for 1,000 years. She knew that he fell in love with a woman from the land, and made her Madame Mingyue. She was also sent away all the female demons in the palace. In such a big East Sea Dragon palace, even the servants who served tea became soldiers. But now he said that he wanted to use Madame Mingyue to tempt Li Yunxin to surrender. Lord Vast Expanse frowned and said after a long time, "I don't believe it. I want to see her." Lord Vast Expanse snorted and put the golden ball back into his sleeve. Dragon King of South Sea hurriedly said, "Lord Vast Expanse, don't be angry. Madame Mingyue, the three of us saw it just now. Now that things have come to this, let's leave some leeway." The old dragon of North Sea pulled the corner of his clothes and said in a low voice, "Think of the big picture." Lord Vast Expanse took a deep breath. He snorted and turned back to the formation. About half an hour later, the two armies joined together. There were nearly 150,000 soldiers in the vast formation. The demonic energy was so strong that it even scattered the clouds in the sky. Now that the 8 dragon kings had gathered, they were divided into 2 groups. Lord Vast Expanse and the 2 dragon kings were in the chariot in the center, while Lord Vast Expanse and the other 3 were in another camp not far away. Dragon King of Chi Chuan was keeping Lady Guqin company from afar. While waiting for the formation to be dispatched, Lord Vast Expanse glanced at them and snorted disdainfully, "Useless things." Dragon King of North Sea also glanced at them and explained, "After all, she is a strong ally. She should accompany her. It's just that we left her there. What's there to be afraid of?" Obviously, he was still angry at Lord Donghai's provocation. At this moment, the vast Dragon King was extremely impatient. "I thought you were a hero, but she's a coward." "Humph." Just now when the formation opened, she didn't dare to chase after the female demon. "What for?" "Obviously, she knows how powerful our formation is, and is afraid that she will be trapped in it. This means that this woman is also wary of us. Now that I have 150,000 troops, she is just the icing on the cake." He angrily glanced at Dragon King of Chi Chuan a few more times. "Let her be." "Humph. It's best if she can be used." "She can't be used. If she dares to have any bad intentions, I'll deal with her as well." Lord Vast Expanse sighed and didn't say anything else. He knew that Dragon King of North Sea was just being sarcastic. Although the formation was strong, it was only for internal use and not external use. If Lady Guqin wanted to cause trouble, it would be a huge headache. But fortunately, it didn't seem like a bad thing was about to happen. He took a few more glances in that direction and heard the Zither Master say something. Dragon King of Chi Chuan hurriedly nodded and bowed as he ran over like a servant, as if being able to talk to her was a very happy thing. Even an old dragon like him felt embarrassed when he saw this scene. So embarrassing, so embarrassing. His face was about to be thrown all over the land. But Lord Vast Expanse sulked for a while, and suddenly remembered something. He waved his hand, and ordered the 8 demon generals, who had escaped from Li Yunxin, to be summoned. After a while, the 8 demon generals knelt in a row in front of the chariot, looking very frightened. Chapter 692. According to the military discipline of the vast army, since the general had died, the deputy generals should have fought to the death as well. But before the order was given, they had all escaped separately. Normally they would have been beheaded. The vast Dragon King looked at them with a gloomy face and shouted, "Tell me what happened." This shout caused the bodies of the 8 generals to tremble. After a while, one of them raised his head and stammered. My lord, the general of the right died in battle. Oui. Lord Howhan grabbed the cup on the table beside the throne and smashed it on his face. Coward! You ran so fast just now, but now you can't even speak. Take him away and behead him. The guards on both sides shouted and dragged the demon general away. But although this one was pale with fear and didn't seem to want to die, he gritted his teeth and didn't even beg for mercy, because he knew that he could die quickly if he didn't beg for mercy. If he did, he would die a more painful death. North Sea Dragon King watched from the side and was secretly shocked. These 8 generals all had very high cultivation bases, and their ranks were not low either. Any one of them could hold their own in the North Sea army, but the Dragon King killed him just like that. It was obvious that his heart ached for the dead general of the right. Not far away, a scream was heard. The guards came back to hand in the order. They said that the demon general had been beheaded, and what to do with his soul. Lord Howhan waved his hand. Let him go. Let me ask again. What happened just now? This time it took a longer time. Finally, someone gritted his teeth and raised his head, forcing himself to answer. My lord, the general of the right was killed by the female demon with one strike. But before he died, he said he would return to the army. Since he died, we thought that going forward would be disobeying orders and throwing our lives away. So we wanted to keep ourselves useful, so that we could take the vanguard and avenge the general of the right. Lord Howhan laughed sinisterly. Humph, good. What a useful body. He slammed the armrest again. Let me ask you, how did he die? Profound life. How did he get killed in one strike? What happened? The demon general was stunned. This general. Seeing that Lord Vast Expanse's expression was getting worse and worse, he hurriedly knelt down and said, Your lordship, I know there's something fishy going on, but I really don't know what's going on. For some reason, he suddenly paused, as if he wanted to do something or say something. But he was killed by the banshee. No matter how I think about it, I still feel that something is amiss. General of the Right's Hung Kung Fu. When the North Sea Dragon King heard this, he said in a deep voice, Did Li Yunxin do anything at that time? The demon general thought for a while. He seemed to have said something about, talking too much, don't leave, but I didn't see him do anything. The old dragon looked at Lord Vast Expanse. Do you think? Although the abilities of a banshee are strong, it's not enough. But I don't think it's that bad. The Dragon King's face was gloomy. It must be Li Yunxin's doing. We have to figure this out. After all, we have never fought against a peak profound realm expert. As he said this, he saw Chi Chuan Dragon King and Zither Lady coming over. Brother, our honored guest has something to ask. I thought it would be beneficial for the war, so I lured her here. This Chi Chuan Dragon King usually looked submissive when he saw Lord Vast Expanse, but now he called him brother. The 3 Dragon Kings sneered inwardly. They knew that this guy wanted to make himself look good in front of the banshee, so they ignored him. In the time it took to say a few words, they had already brought Zither Lady to the carriage. Looking at Lord Vast Expanse's expression, they led her to the carriage. The vast Dragon King snorted and lowered his eyes. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the old dragon of the North Sea stand up. It's a guest. What do you want to ask, Zither Lady? I heard that Li Yunxin is seriously injured. I want to ask who fought with him, and how badly injured he is. Zither Lady didn't seem displeased by Lord Vast Expanse's attitude. Her tone was cold and serious. If someone who knew Zither Lady was here, they would be shocked. The North Sea Dragon King blinked. Zither Lady, I have a few doubts. I want to confirm them. I also want to ask, when did Li Yunxin come to the sea? The North Sea Dragon King frowned. If you want to ask about these things. He hesitated for a while, and looked at Lord Vast Expanse. Then he said, There are quite a few generals who fought with him. Zither Lady interrupted him. I've asked Lord Chichuan to summon a few generals to ask, but their cultivation and experience aren't enough, so it's hard to get anything useful out of them. So I want to hear what you have to say. The North Sea Dragon King coughed. We haven't fought with him yet. You haven't? Zither Lady frowned. As Lord Cao I see. The way we do things on the sea is different from how we do things on land. Sigh. Lord Vast Expanse's eyes widened. What do you mean? Zither Lady smiled and shook her head. On land, if we encounter such a difficult opponent, our lord should take action. During the Battle of Cloud Mountain, many monster kings took the lead. I didn't expect it to be on the sea. You guys act like humans. The Vast Expanse Dragon King was furious. Who are you scolding? Zither Lady smiled again. Lord Vast Expanse, there's no need to be angry. I heard from Lord Chichuan that Li Yunxin once attacked your central tent alone. Even if Lord Vast Expanse didn't do anything at that time, you should at least know what he looked like at that time. Lord Vast Expanse was about to curse. The North Sea Dragon King hurriedly pressed his hand and looked at Zither Lady. When we do things on the sea, we pay attention to the overall situation. We heard a little about the Battle of Cloud Mountain on land, but we only heard that it was a defeat. Haha. But let's not talk about the past now. Zither Lady wants to ask about Li Yunxin's injury. He thought for a moment. I didn't think about this before. I heard Lord Vast Expanse mention it. He was seriously injured before he charged into the enemy. And it wasn't a normal injury. It was an injury to his spirit. We on the sea don't like to take advantage of others. That's why Lord Vast Expanse didn't do anything. Why do you ask? But Zither Lady was stunned. She frowned slightly and asked again. Then, when did he come to the sea? It's been a while. It should be almost a month. Zither Lady's frown deepened. Is North Sea Lord sure? She had unintentionally shown contempt just now, which made the already angry Lord Vast Expanse even more furious. But when the North Sea Dragon King returned it, she didn't care. As if what she said just now was unintentional. And now, he had such a solemn and pensive look on his face. Lord Vast Expanse didn't care. But the North Sea Dragon King realized that she might know something. He said in a low voice, I'm sure. Did Zither Lady think of something? With me. He should have come to the sea recently. No more than 10 days ago. Zither Lady said in a low voice. Because I came after him. The old dragon sensed something unusual from her words. Please tell me in detail. Take a seat. But Zither Lady wasn't in the mood to sit. She frowned. Before this, I've been in the Tongtian Marsh area of the Yi country on the mainland. About 10 days ago, I found out about Li Yunxin. He appeared there and seemed to be looking for some helpers to come to the sea to help him. By the time I got the news, he had already left for about 2 days. Knowing his whereabouts, I spent a day doing some things, so that his helper would not be able to come. After that, I chased after him all the way here. I didn't stop along the way. It's been 7 days since I set off from here. Li Yunxin's speed can't be faster than mine. 10 days ago, he appeared in the Tongtian Marsh area of the Yi country, so it's impossible for him to be in the sea for more than a month. The 3 Dragon Kings were stunned at the same time. Lord Beihai frowned and thought for a while, then said in a low voice, Zither Lady said that Li Yunxin appeared on the mainland 10 days ago. But 10 days ago, I calculated that he was indeed in the sea. And just 5 or 6 days ago, Taoist Violet Knight of the Lifeless Immortal Sect fought with him. That Taoist Violet Knight is at the profound realm of life. When the 2 of them fought, almost everyone in the 9 seas would know. That momentum was definitely not a fake. But what Zither Lady saw, could it be someone else? How did you find out about his whereabouts? Who told you about it? Who did he ask for help? Can you tell me more? As he asked these questions, he noticed that Zither Lady's expression changed. It was a little strange. Lord Howhan snorted coldly. What's the point of talking so much? Who cares what tricks he has up his sleeves against the 150,000 soldiers? Right now, we only need to know that the Demoness isn't ridiculously strong. General of the Right must have been tricked by Li Yunxin's magic weapon. That's why he didn't have time to use his demonic energy to protect himself. North Sea Dragon King waved his hand. The 2 armies are in the middle of setting up the formation. It will take some time. Why don't you listen to Zither Lady? Maybe we also overlooked something. Lord Howhan snorted again. But this time, Zither Lady didn't speak as straightforwardly as before. She frowned. Li Yunxin went to ask for help from Emperor Li of the Heaven Swamp of the Yi country. At that time, I happened to hear it. I also took a look at him. I also believe that I didn't see wrongly. When she said these words, even though she tried to keep her expression calm, there was still a hint of complexity in her expression. It seemed that there were many things that she hadn't said, that she hadn't told the whole truth. Lord Beihai carefully observed her expression. After a moment of silence, he said politely, "Emperor Li of the land. Oh, I've heard a little about him. I heard that he was originally a person. After his death, he became a ghost emperor at the peak of the profound realm with the power of faith. But there's still one thing that I don't understand. I hope you can enlighten me," he said in a low voice. Emperor Li and Li Yunqin shouldn't have any relationship. Why would Li Yunqin ask for help from him? Then how could Emperor Li allow it? You said that you happened to hear it, and took a look. Could it be that you were beside them at that time? You also said that you spent some time to make that helper unable to come. If that helper was Emperor Li was at the peak of the profound realm. But you seem to have been injured in the Battle of Cloud Mountain, and I don't know where you went. You just fought with the demoness at the peak of the profound realm, and it was hard to tell who won. How did you make that Emperor Li unable to come in one day? He glanced at Lord Haohan. Zither lady, please enlighten me. Chapter 693. Boundless Dragon King lowered his eyes and listened without saying anything. But when he heard this, he raised his head. Then he saw Old Dragon of the North Sea glance at him and waved his hand calmly. A demon general came to his side, and he whispered a few orders. The demon general looked at Zither lady and left with a solemn expression. It was very noisy when the troops were mobilized. The voices of the people and the drums blended together. But right now, the carriage was strangely silent. Zither lady was silent for a while. Sichuan Dragon King said hurriedly, Hey, oh, there must be some misunderstanding. Let's talk about it." But Zither lady looked at Lord Boundless, then at the demon general who had left. The demon general disappeared into the formation. But very quickly, he saw a fluttering military flag approaching the carriage. Near the center, the formation was the first to be set up. But now, it moved again and quickly changed into another formation. Although she didn't understand the principle behind the formation, she could feel the change in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. So she realized with the change in the formation, the demon power near the center suddenly surged. She slowly took a step back. She didn't look at Lord Beihai anymore, but at Dragon King. I'm telling the truth. Li Yunqin's injury is very strange, and I also feel that the energy in the formation is somewhat familiar. But I also like to play with formations on land, so I can't remember. But I suspect that it has something to do with the battle on Cloud Mountain. I have to figure it out and think of a countermeasure. As for the other details, they have nothing to do with the matter at hand. Everyone has secrets that they don't want to talk about. Don't you? Lord Boundless was about to get angry when he heard her speak. But now he calmed down. He looked at Zither lady with a solemn face. Everyone has secrets. But Lord Beihai asked you several questions that are related to the battle at hand. It's not something that you can brush off with just a few words. If you really want to kill Li Yunqin, and your determination is as strong as you appear to be, what secrets can't be revealed? Don't tell me that you're here to kill him, because you want to kill him? Are you embarrassed to expose your past? And Lord Vast Expanse stood up. At this time, the demon general that he had ordered earlier returned and reported something in a low voice. He waved his hand to dismiss him and continued to look at the Zither lady. Before you came here, you fought with that demoness for a long time. But it was right in front of us that he heavily injured her, and we saw it. Isn't this too much of a coincidence? Now that we're in the middle of the formation, we'll first talk about dealing with Li Yunqin as soon as possible. Now that he has stayed in our formation for some time, and heard a lot of news from Lord Sichuan's mouth, he said that he wants to understand those things first. He's not in a hurry. Aren't your thoughts changing too quickly? A hint of anger finally appeared on the Zither lady's face, but it also made her expression more animated. You think I'm here to help him? Since you know what happened under the Cloud Mountain, how can you still think like this? Lord Vast Expanse laughed coldly. How would I know if the Cloud Mountain incident was just a farce put up by the Dragon King of your continent. Didn't Li Yunxin use that incident to leap into the profound realm? I heard that he was only at the transcendent realm this spring. Any one of the 8 dragon son of the continent can easily defeat him. But you let him grow to where he is today. Tell me what is going on. The zither lady was so angry that she laughed. You idiot! Lord Vast Expanse immediately said in a low voice. What, are you angry? I'm not afraid to tell you. The power of my 150,000 people is beyond your imagination. Do you want to fight here? Go ahead and try. The Dragon King of Sichuan hurriedly shouted. Wait, don't be angry. Lord North Sea, say something. The Dragon King of North Sea also slowly stood up. He first looked at Lord Sichuan, then at the zither lady, and said in a low voice, Honored guest, if you don't explain some things clearly, we can't trust you at this time. In my opinion, the zither lady suddenly restrained her expression. Fine. Then, take your time to fight with him. I'm not in a hurry. She looked at Lord Vast Expanse darkly and gathered her cloak. I have plenty of time. 1,000 years, 2,000 years. I can catch him eventually. Why do I need to borrow the strength of you reckless idiots? As she said this, her figure suddenly flashed, and she appeared outside of the vast army formation and the 50-kilometer Great Formation. But she didn't go far after retreating 2 formations. He found a spot on the vast surface of the ocean and stood there motionlessly. It was as if she was thinking about something, but also as if she really wanted to see how the battle would end. The Dragon King of North Sea stared at her for a while, then slowly sat down. Although this confrontation was fierce, it only lasted for a quarter of an hour. The newly arrived East Sea Army was still moving into the vast formation, and there was still some time before they launched the final attack on Li Yunxin. He thought for a while, looking at Lord Sichuan, then Lord Vast Expanse, he said in a low voice, Do you really think she's? As if. Lord Vast Expanse also sat down and snorted. I don't believe she's here to help Li Yunxin. Then, think about the lifeless immortal sect. The Dragon King shook his head. If she's not here to help Li Yunxin, she might have other motives. Just like that 10,000-year-old ancestor. He's happy to see us, and Li Yunxin fight to the death. Could it be that she's also on Li Yunxin's side? I'm afraid this woman is also the same. If we go all out and guess, there might be more. For example, Lu Yao is afraid that we're too powerful and wants us to die. Or he's in cahoots with the lifeless immortal sect. Or he might have ulterior motives that we can't guess yet. I said she's a help before because the East Sea Army hadn't arrived yet. Now that the East Sea Army has arrived, I have 150,000 elite soldiers. Why would I keep such an unpredictable plaything by my side? Let's keep an eye on her, he said. After taking care of Li Yunxin, we won't be worried about what she's thinking. The North Sea Dragon King pondered for a while and nodded. This is the right way. Lord Vast Expanse also nodded. After a while he said, Keep an eye on Lord Eastern Sea as well. The old dragon frowned. Him? I think there's something wrong with him too. The Dragon King said in a low voice. We've known each other for 1,000 years. Don't you and I know what kind of person he is? But look at him just now. He's so proud and high-spirited. Don't say that he's in trouble. Even he usually behaved in a lazy manner. Every now and then, he would say that he wanted to live in seclusion and be a carefree guest. When had he ever seen such ambition? There must be something wrong if something's wrong. In his current situation, it's always good to be careful. The North Sea Dragon King pondered for a while and nodded. You be careful too. Lord Vast Expanse pointed at Lord Sichuan. Be careful. Be bewitched by that Lu Yao. Let's not talk about what kind of person she is. Do you think that realm is something you can scheme for? After cursing, he saw that there were still 7 demon generals kneeling in front of him. He stared at them, not saying a word. After a quarter of an hour, someone finally came to report that the formation was completed. He took a deep breath and stood up. It's time to end these things. His gaze turned back to the demon generals. Just now, you said that this body is useful, and that you want to be the vanguard. I'll give you this chance. But this is a formation of 150,000 people. If the demon power enters your body, I'm afraid that your meridians won't be able to bear it. Once you go, it'll be hard for you to come back. Have you thought it through?" The 7 demon generals were silent for a while. Then they all kowtowed to the ground. A dull thud was heard. Lord Vast Expanse smiled eerily and shouted, "Go!" In the vast army formation, when the flags fluttered and people were dispatched, Red Lady landed on a stone pillar. Li Yunxin's behavior confused her, but he didn't have the despair and anxiety he had when he rushed into the formation. So she stared at him. "Apologize. What's wrong with you?" The next moment, she exclaimed in a low voice, "What's wrong with you?" She was burning with anxiety just now, so she didn't take a good look at Li Yunxin. But now that she calmed down a little, she found something strange. There were wounds on Li Yunxin's face and hands. Golden blood was slowly seeping out like a mortal's wound. And it seemed like it wouldn't stop for a while. But he was a profound realm great demon. Even if he was injured, how could he be injured like this? Then she saw a scene that was normal in the eyes of mortals. But in her eyes, it was shocking. Li Yunxin took out a roll of cloth from his sleeve. That roll of cloth was dark and glossy, and there was a faint mysterious light flowing on it. At first glance, she knew it was not an ordinary thing, but a treasure. He stuck out a sharp fingernail from his index finger and made a cut on the roll of cloth. Then he tore it with both hands, and with a tearing sound, a long strip was torn off. Then he bandaged the wound on his hand. He was bandaging it. The golden blood of dragons was extremely corrosive. Seeing this scene, Red Lady realized that Li Yunxin was treating his wound with a treasure that was impervious to fire and water. She was so surprised that she unconsciously repeated what she had said before. "What's wrong with you?" Li Yunxin said with a gentle smile. "I'm a little injured. There's nothing to be afraid of." As he spoke, he pointed to his ear. Red Lady knew that he meant that even though they were using a supernatural power to block their conversation from being heard by others, there were countless magical means in the world, and no one knew if there were any accidents. Realizing this, she turned to look at Qin Fengzi on the stone pillar. Goddess Penglai was also there. But as soon as Red Lady appeared, she hid herself sensibly. She must have learned some things in the 1,000 years when she lost her supernatural power. She knew that great demons were temperamental, and it was better not to show up if possible. But Qin Fengzi had nowhere to hide. Glanced at by the fierce eyes of a super great demon at the peak of profound realm, she felt the spiritual essence in her body stagnate. Luckily, she didn't pass out. Fortunately, Li Yunxin said at this time, "Come and help me. You don't have to worry about him. He has fallen out with the vast army. If I die, he won't be able to live. We can be considered allies for the time being." Chapter 694. He began to bandage the wounds on his face. There were 4 wounds on his face, all on the left side. One on his cheekbone was so deep that the bone could be seen. There was another small wound on his eyelid, and one on his cheek. He wrapped the left side of his face with the bandage, including his eyes. He put the 2 ends behind his head and pointed, "Help me tie it." Red Lady was stunned for a while, and then slowly walked to his side. She raised her hand and took the 2 bandages. After a while, she lowered her voice and said in a trembling voice, "But you are in the mysterious realm. You are the dragons. You are hurt in your divine soul." Li Yunxin sighed. "Don't cry. I am not afraid of anything, but I am afraid that you will cry at this time." Then there was no sound. Red Lady bit her lips and tied it for him. Li Yunxin raised his hand and touched the back of his head. "So I have to apologize to you. You have merged with the dragon soul. I was not sure whether you were still the Li Xianyu and Dongting, so I didn't tell you the truth." Well, after saying that, he paused for a moment. "That can you not tie a bow? Even if you want to tie it, don't tie it so big." The person beside him was silent for a while. Then she felt the cool fingertips touch her hair. "Untie the butterfly knot, and tie it again." "You mean you didn't tell me the truth before? So you just asked me not to let you go? You wanted to test me. You were afraid that I was not me, and would leak your secret." Red Lady breathed in his ear like a gust of warm wind. "I got it." She put down her hand slowly. After a while, Li Yunxin raised his hand and touched the bow again. So, I have to apologize to you. Now do you want to tell me what happened? Li Yunxin put down his hand and thought for a while. I should tell you. But there is an outsider here. This person has a strange ability. He could transmit his voice to my spiritual mind from hundreds of miles away. I am not sure about him. But now I am not in a bad mood and I don't want to kill him. Qin Fengzi hurriedly said. Don't listen, I will go away. He hurriedly ran to the other side of the stone pillar. Both of them ignored him. Red Lady was silent for a while. So, you are now luring the enemy. Your injury is also because of those unspeakable things. Yes. He even used you before. Let them think that I'm waiting for you. Li Yunxin slowly turned around and met her eyes. Me too. What about after that? What if it's over? If you want to know, I'll tell you. Red Lady faintly smiled. Then I won't blame you. Li Yunxin was stunned. Then he sighed. You are still you. As he said this, he looked at her hands. Your hands are cold. Are you injured at the Golden Palace aperture? Red Lady softly grunted in agreement. Li Yunxin touched the little finger of his left hand. After searching for a while, he took out 4 small jade bottles. Zither Monarch is not an ordinary person. Eat these. The female demon looked at the jade bottles and said in a low voice, My injuries are fine. You are the one who should eat these. I'm the one who is chewing on peonies. Li Yunxin sighed. You know that my soul is injured and my foundation is shaken. My injuries can only be healed after my soul is nourished. These things can regulate the spiritual energy in the meridians, but they are useless for the soul. Red Lady looked at him. She didn't say anything and didn't take the pills. After about 3 breaths she said, Then feed them to me. Li Yunxin lightly coughed. My hand just beat up a lot of smelly soldiers. It's good that it's your hand. After a while. Okay, eat the golden marrow pill first. Li Yunxin restrained her expression and calmly opened the cork of the first jade bottle, slowly taking out the elixir. He hesitated for a while and said, Listen to the formula. Slowly nourish the golden jade liquid in the lead furnace. Clear the jade mirror in the light. Red Lady opened her mouth and stared at him, as if she was seeing him for the first time. Li Yunxin brought the golden marrow pill to her lips. She gently bit it and swallowed it. Then eat the profound purity pill. Li Yunxin opened the second bottle. The mysterious light fired jujube in the cauldron, then ride the Luan chariot to clear the sky. She swallowed the second pill. Then eat the profound essence pill. Li Yunxin opened the third bottle. The profound essence pill that can overturn the heavens and cover the earth, condensing the essence in the vacuum. She swallowed the third pill. Li Yunxin opened the fourth bottle and pinched the last pill between his fingers. He looked at Red Lady for a while and put it into her mouth. Swallow a golden marrow pill, he said in a low voice. My life is in my hands. The female demon swallowed the fourth pill and slowly closed her eyes. The first 3 sentences Li Yunxin said were all about the formula after taking the pill. However, the fourth pill was a Qian Kuan 10,000 Harmony Qi replenishing pill. It only replenished the spiritual energy in the user's body and didn't require any formula. The next 2 sentences were straightforward and easy to understand. They couldn't be said to be good sentences. But Red Lady closed her eyes and sighed. I like the last 2 sentences. She smiled as she said that. But a tear slid down from the corner of her eye. After a while, she opened her eyes again and raised her hand to wipe away the tear. Now what should I do? Li Yunxin also smiled. I told you to eat these because I didn't want you to get hurt. It has nothing to do with what I want you to do. You rest well first. He hesitated for a moment. But in a while, I need you to take the lead and use all your skills to fight against them. This is a great formation. A great formation forged by 150,000 well-trained elite soldiers over many years. The demonic energy in the formation is far from what the motley crew at the foot of the cloudy mountain can compare to. Even I'm a little afraid. In a while, it might be very dangerous. Red Lady looked at him. But will you watch me die? Li Yunxin also looked at her. I won't. She smiled faintly. Then I'm not afraid. While they were talking, the flags in the vast formation changed, and the soldiers moved back and forth. After a while, The disturbance that lasted for nearly half an hour subsided. Later, the reinforcements were incorporated into the vast formation. Li Yunxin and Red Lady both felt the changes that were almost visible to the naked eye. Right now, they seemed to be in a world of golden light. Extremely strong demonic energy filled the sky and the sea. If one looked carefully, they could even see faint golden ripples falling in the air. It was very much like raindrops falling on a glass, and the dense raindrops eventually joined together and converged into a stream of water that slowly flowed down. Li Yunxin said in a low voice, "They are going to make a move." He turned around and looked at Red Lady. "In a while, don't be anxious. Don't be in a hurry to kill people, and don't be in a hurry to rush out. I need you to make them mobilize as much demonic energy as possible under the condition that you don't have to worry about your own life." Their formation, he thought for a moment. In my opinion, they are pouring the power of hundreds of thousands of demons into the bodies of a few people. But such a strong power is not something that everyone can bear. The first to come are the demon generals, but their bodies can't hold on for too long. Don't attack forcefully, just stall for time. When the time comes, they will naturally be finished. When they realize that the demon generals can't do anything to you, maybe they will ask the Dragon King to come. At this time, I want the more Dragon King to come, the better. But don't be anxious. If I tell you to retreat, you retreat. This battle must be won, you have to believe me. Red Lady nodded. She said solemnly, "Okay." Li Yunxin glanced into the distance. Above the sea, 15 figures appeared. If one carefully observed the spiritual energy there, they would realize that the majestic demonic energy in the formation was almost all gathered in their bodies. This made their souls look extremely bright, like 15 blazing suns. But this was the result of the formation, and also the result of those demons quickly overdrafting their vitality. The demon generals quickly approached and began to curse. Li Yunxin had a good memory, and he could vaguely recognize a few familiar ones. They should be the deputy general behind the vast right general, who was killed by Red Lady. Those deputy generals were reprimanded because of the death of their general, and now they understood that this trip was a one-way trip, so they were particularly courageous. From a distance, they began to unscrupulously curse and ridicule, as if they wanted to vent all the pent-up anger in their hearts. Unfortunately, the sea monsters had lived on the sea for a long time, and there was nothing new in cursing people. They were nothing more than ridiculing Li Yunxin for relying on a female demon, but hiding behind her, as if he was living off a woman. They also told him to come out if he had the guts, and that he would definitely do something to him. But the two people on the stone pillar didn't care about those obscenities. Li Yunxin withdrew his gaze and smiled. "They are right. If you didn't come this time, I don't know how much effort I would have to put in. When I was young, Li Chunfeng once read my palm and joked with me that I had many benefactors to help me in this life, and I would definitely achieve great things in the future. In the past, I don't know if those who help me are benefactors, but you are the princess of Dongting, so you should be a benefactor." Red Lady was silent for a while, and then said, "Speaking of Li Chunfeng, I just saw him. He asked me to bring you a message. He said that the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. He told you to be careful." Li Yunxin's smile froze on his face. Red Lady looked at his face and briefly told him about her encounter with Taoist Qing Shui. After a while, Li Yunxin looked at the demon generals and the army formation that were closing in from afar. Suddenly he shook his head and smiled mysteriously. "The oriole is behind. Do you think he wants to tell me that the oriole is the vast sea array of the lifeless immortal school? Or him?" He said, "If you want to find him and ask him to save your mother, you have to calm the ocean first." Red Lady bit her lip gently. "I don't think he, bad guy? Haha." Li Yunxin turned around and walked to the stone pillar. He put his hands behind his back, and half of his face was wrapped in black bandages. He only stared at the demon generals who were less than 10 miles away from him, and were still approaching. After standing like this for a while, he said, "I used to lie to you. Li Chunfeng also lied to me. Although you don't hate me, I can't do it. At this point, I probably know myself better than him. I know I like to do bad things, and I never think I am a good person. Red Lady opened her mouth, but Li Yunxin seemed to see her. You want to talk about your father? But at least your father is a real villain. When he killed you and refined you, he would not tell you that he had his own difficulties. He humph. Ruthless, abandoning his wife and son. He can't wash his name clean. Chapter 695. Therefore, the female demon stopped talking and just sighed faintly. 2 breaths later, Li Yunxin also sighed. I'm so annoyed by their noise. Then I'll go and get rid of them first. Red Lady walked to his side. Don't worry. Before her voice died away, she had already appeared 10 miles away, almost face to face with those demon generals. The sudden appearance of a great demon at the peak of the Xian realm stunned the sea demons, who were cursing like sparrows who had seen an eagle. But they were generals who had seen battle formations. The time they were stunned, and the time they attacked was only a blink of an eye. But when facing a super great demon, this blink of an eye was enough to kill them. The Red Lady in battle was completely different from the Red Lady, who was talking to Li Yunxin just now. As soon as the demon generals raised their hands, Li Xinyu's hands grabbed the heads of 2 demon generals. Bang! Their heads collided with each other and exploded into a pool of blood. And at this time her "don't worry" had just fallen into Li Yunxin's ears. As soon as the demon generals died, the surging demonic energy in their bodies immediately burst out. The spiritual energy swept across the ocean from the place where the 2 demon generals died like a violent storm. Even the stone pillar where Li Yunxin stood was buzzing and shaking violently. The wind formed by this spiritual energy also tore Li Yunxin's clothes, making him feel as if his face was being cut by a knife, as if a few more wounds were about to be added. This power shocked him. Although he already knew that the demonic energy in the vast battle formation was extremely strong, he didn't expect it to be so strong. When ordinary demons fought one-on-one, it was like a fight between 2 strong men, and each attack was made with all of their strength. But human muscles always had a limit, and they would get tired. Although this fatigue would slowly recover, the speed of recovery couldn't keep up with the speed of exerting force, so the strength couldn't last long. But now, the 150,000 demons in the battle formation were like many people slowly and gently exerting force. They gathered their strength in a certain way and became stronger. But when these sources of power exerted force, they didn't need to use all of their strength, and they had enough time to rest. This meant that they could persist for a longer time. Compared to an individual, it was almost as long as the heavens and the earth. The Dragon King's confidence is not built on nothing. Li Yunxin frowned slightly and glanced at the burst of mystic light. Finally, he saw more than 10 figures whizzing out as fast as lightning. Red Madam took the lead, and the demon generals followed closely behind. They were entangled in a fight. Only then did he feel slightly relieved. After the Banshee killed 2 people, the battle officially began. The demon generals gained strength that far exceeded their own limits out of nowhere, so they couldn't comprehend it in a short time. Firstly, there were many of them, and secondly, they were not afraid of death. Thirdly, these fellows were like a bunch of bombs. Even if he died, he could still cause considerable damage. Red Lady had obviously suffered a bit from the previous outburst, so she no longer confronted him head-on. She wandered among the crowd, following Li Yunxin's instructions to protect herself first, and then subdue the enemy. The cursing that had been bothering Li Yunxin had disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a huge roar. The strength contained in each of the fiendish demons' attacks could easily create a deep whirlpool on the surface of the sea. However, in close combat, they restrained this power in their bodies as much as possible, so that when they hit the enemy, they could pour all of their power into the enemy's body, causing terrible damage. When dealing with low-level demons, high-level demons like to use their magical power. For example, area attack, which could cause considerable damage with one hit. But in this level of battle, the way of fighting also changed fundamentally. The magical power that could be casually thrown out was just like scratching an itch for the demon generals, who had strong demon power. The most effective way was to return to the natural state. Like mortals in the secular world, Only by punching the flesh could the effect be seen. In this way, it seemed that the demon generals of the Dragon King army benefited. When the water demons formed an army, they naturally had to practice some martial arts. These martial arts were not useful against small demons, but they were useful against big demons. After Red Lady ambushed and killed the 2 demon generals, a dozen or so breaths of time had passed, and the demon generals were now evenly matched with her. They even had the upper hand a few times. 3 hits on her body, causing her to temporarily give up on her target. The rhythm of the battle was so fast that the gloomy expression on the demon general's face had not completely faded after seeing the 2 demon generals killed, and they shouted, "Good!" He proudly turned his face and glanced at the lonely zither lady in the distance, hoping that this unruly guy could also see the battle and know the power of the demon generals. But to his disappointment, although zither lady was also watching the battle, her face was still gloomy, as if she was still worried about something. So his good mood was half gone. He sneered again, "These Lu people, humph." But North Sea Dragon King said in a low voice, "It's a battle of attrition. We should send a few more to finish it as soon as possible." As he said this, he also glanced at zither lady. "Seeing her like this makes me a little uneasy." Usually, Lord Hauhan and Lord Beihai weren't on good terms. But these few days, Lord Beihai found it difficult to hide in the demon general's army, and his attitude was much more humble. Thus, the demon dragon king realized that this old guy was slightly to his liking. Thus, when he heard what Lord Beihai said, he only smiled faintly. "You worry too much. In my opinion, there is nothing between this female demon and Li Yunxin." At this point, his eyes suddenly widened, because on the surface of the ocean, Red Lady's body suddenly shone with golden light, and her appearance changed. A pair of bright horns suddenly appeared on her forehead, and her face was also covered by densely packed scales. Her body became more slender, but her speed and strength increased at a shocking rate. Once this change happened, another demon general died in an instant, and an astonishing amount of spiritual energy exploded on the ocean once again. She has never shown her fiend god form before. North Sea Dragon King said in a low voice. Lord Hauhan, quickly send more people. But in the time it took for him to say this, 2 more beams of mysterious light exploded, and 2 more people were killed. The demon dragon king stood up, slightly opened his mouth, and a fervent light appeared in his eyes. Looking at him like this, he felt even more refreshed. "What are you panicking about?" He laughed loudly and pointed to the distance. Good news, good news. Haha. I know that those land dragons have this trick, but to force her fiend god form out, it will take a lot of effort. But now, do you understand? This means that she almost couldn't hold on just now, and had to use her special skill in advance. Wonderful. Someone, summon the generals. In a short while another 10 demon generals flew out from the formation and joined the battle. With the addition of fresh troops, Red Lady's temporary advantage was quickly eliminated, and the battle became a stalemate again. Lord Hauhan stared at the battle situation on the surface of the ocean without blinking, and only occasionally glanced at Li Yunxin on the stone pillar. Li Yunxin was originally standing, but the violent demonic energy when the demon general died seemed to be too much for his heavily injured body to bear, so he sat down now. Lord Hauhan couldn't help but look at him a few more times. With this look, he found that he was doing something strange. The demon dragon king frowned and said to Lord Beihai, "What is he doing?" Lord Beihai also used his divine sense to look at Li Yunxin carefully. His expression also became strange. After a while he said in disbelief, "He seems to be, self-mutilating?" Li Yunxin was indeed mutilating himself. When the 2 dragon kings on the sea saw him, he was using the nail on his index finger to cut the flesh of his left forearm. Dragons had strong bodies, and their recovery ability was even more amazing. His flesh was like the strongest shield, and the sharp nail on his index finger was like the strongest spear. But his spirit was injured, and he couldn't even heal the wound on his body, so his body couldn't be called strongest anymore. Without the infusion of demonic energy, he was even weaker than many mysterious realm demons. So now cutting his forearm was effortless. The knife-like claws cut open the flesh, and the muscles opened to both sides, revealing the pale blue bones underneath. His face was calm as usual, as if he didn't feel any pain. He even occasionally looked at the situation on the battlefield. As he looked, he exerted force, and forcibly pulled out the 2 bones of his forearm. Lord Howhan and the North Sea Dragon King were not soft-hearted people. However, when they saw this scene, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. They couldn't help but whisper, "What is he doing?" Li Yunxin seemed to feel their gazes. He suddenly turned his face and smiled at them. The 2 Dragon Kings looked at each other and didn't know what to say for a moment. Then they saw Li Yunxin holding the 2 arm bones that were still oozing golden blood, looking at them for a while. Then he raised his hand and threw them into the sea. Then he waved his hand behind him and said something. Qin Fengzi, who was watching the situation on the battlefield with a tense face, walked up to him. He was also shocked to see him like this. Li Yunxin gave a few more orders, and Qin Fengzi took the bandages that Li Yunxin tore off from the roll of black cloth. He carefully bandaged Li Yunxin's wounds so that he wouldn't come in contact with the blood. After wrapping up her left forearm, Li Yunxin pulled up her clothes again. Without any hesitation, she tore open a terrifyingly big hole on her right leg. She reached her hand inside and pulled out her thigh bone and knee. Qin Fengzi's face twisted when he saw this, and he was obviously as surprised as the 2 Dragon Kings of the sea. But Li Yunxin didn't show any pain on his face. Instead, he looked happy. He threw the newly pulled-out bone into the sea, and Qin Fengzi bandaged his wound again. Lord Howhan and the North Sea Dragon King were confused. After a long time, Lord Howhan murmured, "Could it be? What? Not injured but poisoned?" The North Sea Dragon King said hesitantly, "Did Qin Fengzi ask about Li Yunxin's injury before? Even she felt that it was strange. We all thought that his spirit was injured. Could it be that he was poisoned deep into his bones, and had no choice but to throw away his bones?" Chapter 696. Lord Howhan frowned. "How come I've never heard of this poison?" "I've never heard of it either," Lord Beihai murmured. "But look at his expression. Although he's hurting himself, he seems to be very happy, as if he feels better after losing a bone. What else can he think of other than this?" Dragon King only stared at Li Yunxin. "This guy. Why does he have so many tricks up his sleeves?" He slammed the chair angrily. "No matter what he's doing, I want him to die today. I want him to die today." Li Yunxin's inexplicable behavior worried the 2 Dragon King, and even made Lord Howhan, who had just been complacent, angry for no reason. But in fact, when he cut open his chest and took out the 3rd rib, his body couldn't help but tremble. He did it cleanly and without hesitation, not because it didn't hurt, but because it was too painful. After the tremble, he waved his hand and took a deep breath. "Rest for a while, rest for a while. I can't take it anymore." Qin Fengzi also couldn't take it anymore. Although he was very careful when bandaging the wound, he still couldn't help but get some tiny drops of blood. Those drops of blood were like boiling oil splashed on a mortal's body, scalding him so much that he took a deep breath. But even so, he still hoped that Li Yunxin would finish this as soon as possible. Because now only half of the 3rd rib was out, and it was sticking out, including the 2 that he had lost. Now he could see the strong and powerful heartbeat in Li Yunxin's chest. He could even hear the heavy sound of it. This scene made him numb all over, and he finally couldn't help but ask, "Dragon King, what are you doing?" Li Yunxin gritted her teeth and exhaled through the gaps between her teeth. Guess. He didn't want to tell him. But how could Qin Fengzi guess? He had heard of mortals scraping the bones to cure the poison, but he had never heard of Li Yunxin's method, so he could only keep quiet. At this time, Red Lady had been fighting with the demon general on the ocean for more than 15 minutes. After killing the 2 demons just now, she had suffered 3 consecutive heavy injuries. Qin Fengzi was frightened every time he saw it. He knew that if he was the one who was hit by that kind of attack, not even his bones would be left. His body and soul would be destroyed. However, the demoness cultivation level was very high. This kind of injury didn't seem to affect her too much. Instead, 5 more generals joined the vast army, stabilizing the situation once again. Qin Fengzi couldn't help but whisper, Dragon King, it's not good for us if this goes on. Do you still have? No hurry, Li Yunqin said in a low voice. However, Qin Fengzi could tell that he was anxious. It's not strong enough. This array is not strong enough. I want them to be stronger. A few more deaths would be nice. Speaking up to this point, Red Madam and the 5 demon generals fought head-on and killed another demon general. The violent demonic energy covered the sky and covered the earth as it swept over. Right at this moment, Li Yunqin suddenly raised her hand and tore off the 3rd, 4th, and 5th ribs. She even pulled so hard that her body turned halfway before she threw them into the sea without any hesitation. Then he closed the flesh and gritted his teeth and said, Wrap them up. Qin Fengzi hurriedly took out some bandages. At this time, he also felt something was wrong. He realized, every time this Wei River Dragon King hurt himself, it was when the demon generals were killed by the demoness and their demonic energy exploded. Once this thought appeared in his mind, he subconsciously sensed the flow of spiritual energy around him. Finally, he noticed something amidst the violent and disorderly flow of spiritual power. When the demon generals died, their demonic energy would dissipate. It should have been absorbed by the vast army and sent back into the battle. This cycle repeated endlessly, but when the demonic energy attacked, the Wei River Lord beside him seemed to have used some method to absorb some of it into his body. The amount of demonic energy he absorbed was also very large. Under normal circumstances, people would have noticed it. But the demonic energy in this formation was too vast. It was like a strong gust of wind was covered by a storm, making people unable to notice it. Qin Fengzi was also proficient in formations. Thus, although his cultivation and methods were not as good as Li Yunqin's, he could roughly sense it. He realized that Wei River Dragon King was using the demonic energy to refine something. When he realized this, he blurted out without thinking, What is the Dragon King refining? Li Yunqin panted heavily and looked at him with surprise. Oh, looks like you have some talent after all. I can see that too. After saying this, before the demonic energy completely dissipated, he gritted his teeth and cut open his left leg. Hiss. They say that men should be more ruthless to themselves. Do you think I am ruthless enough to myself? Hiss. I think no one is more ruthless than me. As the saying goes, if I am not even afraid of death, what is there to be afraid of? As he said this, cold sweat seeped out of his forehead. His movements also slowed down. He tried to pull out his own bone twice before finally pulling it out. Qin Fengzi realized that at this moment, Li Yunqin was really an arrow at the end of its flight. Dragon's bones, flesh and blood were almost all made from demonic energy and godly souls. Now Li Yunqin was throwing away his bones one by one. Although there might be a way to ensure that he didn't lose his divine sense, it was also causing more and more damage to his godly soul. Being injured in the godly soul made his body weaker, and his demonic energy exhausted. He was actually showing signs of exhaustion. Thus, he started to talk more, as if he wanted to use this method to distract himself and temporarily reduce the pain. Noticing all this, Qin Fengzi's expression changed, and his movements also slowed down for a moment. But then he heard Li Yunqin snort. I advise you not to have any evil thoughts. You should know, damn it. I dare to let you see this. Am I not afraid that you will capture me and use me to atone for my sins? Qin Fengzi's hands trembled slightly as he hurriedly said, No. But Li Yunqin sneered. It's best if you don't. Don't you like formations? You can ask yourself later, do you want to see an earth-shattering formation? I guarantee that once you see it, you will feel that dying is worth it. Qin Fengzi kept his mouth shut. He wanted to see the formation that Li Yunqin mentioned, but he didn't want to die. After another 15 minutes, Red Madam had already fought with the demon generals on the ocean for a long time. She had killed 21 people, but she had also suffered serious injuries. Her injuries were almost as serious as the blow from the Zither monarch. But the result was indeed shocking. The vast army sent out 37 demon generals, but they still couldn't subdue her. The duration of this battle exceeded Li Yunqin's, and Lord Howhen's expectations. He still had 9 generals to use, but he couldn't lead the army by himself. This battle wasn't the final battle. After taking care of Li Yunxin, he still had to face the lifeless immortal sect. If he threw the remaining demon generals into the fray, he wouldn't be able to command the army in the future, and that would be a loss that he couldn't bear. Maybe he could wait to see how badly the demon generals could injure Red Madam, and then let the Dragon Kings take action. But Li Yunxin was still doing those strange things on the stone pillar. The 2 Dragon Kings saw him doing all that, and could feel that he was getting weaker. But if something was out of the ordinary, it would be better if he didn't do it. After doing all that, Lord Howhen couldn't control his impatience anymore, and felt that he couldn't watch Li Yunxin continue doing all that as if no one else was around. If the female demon wasn't eliminated, sending people to attack Li Yunxin would also be stopped by him. If they had a peak profound realm expert on their side, they could finish the battle in one fell swoop. But that Qin Jun also saw what Li Yunxin was doing, and unexpectedly retreated even further. This Lu Ke's action prompted Lord Howhen to make a decision. He stood up and said in a deep voice, "Pass the order. Tell them to return to the formation." North Sea Dragon King was stunned. "This is?" asked Lord Donghai to try. "Didn't he say he had a way?" Boundless Dragon King paced around anxiously. Logically, everything was under control, but the ominous feeling in his heart was getting stronger and stronger. Things had already reached this point, but Li Yunxin didn't even have the slightest intention of being driven into a dead end. If his method doesn't work, he gritted his teeth and said, "We'll go and take care of him ourselves. We were sealed out by the Shinryu's sea ceiling. Our souls are this sea and sky, and with the support of this formation, we're stronger than those people below. It's been dragged on for too long. Too long. We need to end it quickly, end it quickly." North Sea Dragon King sighed in his heart. This Lord Howhen was too impatient. He had said the words "end it quickly" many times before, but Lord Howhen was complacent and only felt that victory was in his grasp. It had only been half an hour, but he suddenly changed his mind and became so anxious. This wasn't the demeanor of a great general. But this army was his, so what could Lord Howhen say? Soon, the golden drum sounded in the formation, summoning the remaining 16 demon generals to return to the formation. But at this point, they couldn't retreat just because they wanted to. When the demon generals heard the sound of the drum, they were distracted for a moment, and 3 of them were killed by Red Lady on the spot. They paid a heavy price before retreating to the army. At this moment, the female demon was also exhausted. After realizing that this wasn't a trick of the enemy, she finally had time to look at Li Yunxin and saw the bloody scene on the stone pillar. She was stunned, turned into a golden light, and flew back screaming, "What are you doing?" At this time, a pool of golden blood had accumulated under Li Yunxin. The blood gathered and flowed into the sea under the stone pillar like a waterfall. She pushed Qin Fingzi far away and held him up. I'm doing the finishing work," Li Yunxin said weakly. But he was still smiling, but his lips were as white as paper. "You did a good job. They can't sit still anymore." Lord Howhen, this idiot has such a bad mentality. He must be guessing what I'm doing now. Unfortunately, none of them are smart, and they can't figure it out. These idiots, humph. If they didn't send those demon generals to die one by one, I would probably be in more trouble. Haha, such a group of people. How dare they fight with me? As he spoke, he leaned his head on the female demon's arm. This was probably the first time he showed such weakness in front of Red Lady. But the female demon didn't feel any tenderness or sweetness, and she was so worried that she almost cried. Li Yunxin let out a sigh of relief. It's just for a while. After a while, he gritted his teeth and laughed. I'll show them how they created a Grand Elder. Chapter 697. The word Grand Supreme had an unparalleled allure to any existence in the world. Even at this moment, Red Lady was also stunned when she heard these 2 words. Li Yunxin said in a low voice, I still have some medicinal pills, take them. Now it's the most critical time. I still have some things to do. Half an hour. I need you to. At this point, he saw another person coming out from the vast army in the distance. Li Yunxin paused. The person who came out was Lord Donghai. He frowned. You're asking him to fight? But he quickly realized that he was wrong. 3 more people followed behind Lord Donghai. Each of them brought a few more attendants. But they didn't follow closely. They were about 10 zhang away. Li Yunxin hadn't seen every dragon king on the sea. He only recognized 3, one of which was Lord Haohan. So judging from the other two's appearance and bearing, they weren't demon generals either. Strange. Lord Donghai was in front, and the 3 dragon kings were behind. It was as if they were watching him. He was right. Lord Haohan, Lord Beihai, and Lord Qichuan stared at the dragon king from afar. Moreover, Lord Haohan didn't look too good. This was because when he ordered Lord Donghai to come out, that guy was a bit strange. In the past, the Dragon King had the widest territory in the ocean, and the most powerful soldiers. And Lord Donghai was one of the Dragon Kings guarding the island, and he wasn't weak either. When there were so many people, there was always a need to decide who was stronger. Lord Donghai was closer to Shinryu because of guarding the island, so his reputation was higher. Therefore, he was the one who summoned the Dragon King to Penglai for a meeting. With such a past, and now he brought an army here. No matter what he said, he should be proud of his status. But when Lord Haohan gave the order, this guy didn't hesitate and immediately agreed. It was as if he had suddenly changed. He really felt ashamed of what he had done before, and now he really wanted to atone for his sins. But Lord Haohan did not believe such a thing. Especially when Penglai had been lost, his scheme had been exposed, and his military power had been taken away. He did not believe that Lord Donghai could still be so excited. Therefore, he stared at Lord Donghai's back and whispered, "This bastard. Where does he get his courage from?" The Dragon King of North Sea was right beside him, riding on the waves. Listening to his words, she also whispered, "Perhaps it's because we're sure to win? Or maybe it's because, there's nothing left. I'm free now, and the debt is too much to bear. Don't worry for now." At this point, Lord Donghai stopped and turned around. He held the golden ball in his hand, and turned around to look at the 3 Dragon King. "I said it's already 20 li. If I go any further, I'm afraid that the female monster will catch up with me. But I still have to go forward. Are the 3 of you going to accompany me into danger?" At this moment, they were only about 30 li away from the stone pillar, where Li Yunxin and Red Lady were. For mortals, they could not see anything at such a distance. If it was a mountain road, it would probably take several hours to walk. But for the great demons, such a distance was already very close, and it could indeed be said to be a short distance. Lord Haohan hesitated for a moment and stopped. He frowned and stared at Lord Donghai. "Don't play tricks." Lord Donghai laughed. "Tricks? Brother, now I have no fief, no military power. Besides, there are the lifeless immortal sect and the Shinryu outside. The only place where I can survive is in this army. I have nothing. Do you still think I want to play tricks?" After saying this, his expression became serious. "I did something wrong before. Now I'm just keeping my promise. In this world, not everyone values some things as much as you do." After saying this, he turned around. "I'm going. If you don't trust me, just wait and see." Of course, Dragon King was worried. But that guy's last few words were said with awe-inspiring righteousness, which made him feel sullen again. He waved his hand fiercely. "Follow him." Therefore, the subordinates behind the 3 Dragon Kings picked up their weapons and followed them. Lord Donghai held the golden ball and moved forward for another 5 li before stopping. The surface of the ocean was silent. There was only dense demon power flowing like water. He was silent for a moment, took a deep breath, and said in a low voice, "Li Yunxin, Shangguan Yu is in my hands." After saying this, he held up the golden ball in his palm. "Look here. 30 li. In the past, Li Yunxin could clearly see every hair on Lord Donghai's head when he used his demon power. But now, he was almost no different from a dead man. His spirit was severely injured, and his demon power was almost gone. He could only see that Lord Donghai was indeed on the surface of the ocean, but he could not hear what he was saying. So he leaned on Red Lady's arm and asked weakly, "What did he say?" Is he challenging me? Ha! He joined hands with me before, so they were relieved to call him out. But Red Lady did not answer him immediately. He looked at her with a little effort. What? He. Seeing her expression, Li Yunxin was stunned. Then he frowned, struggled to prop up his body, and realized that something was wrong. What did he say? Red Lady bit her lip. You can't help it. Don't do anything stupid. You can't save her. Li Yunxin blinked. He didn't know where he got the strength from, but he suddenly sat up straight and stared at Lord Donghai on the ocean. After watching for a while, he shouted sternly, What did he say? What is that in his hand? Tell me. Red Lady whispered, he said. Shangguan Yu is in his hand. In that ball. Li Yunxin's face became ferocious. His robe exploded, and the remaining demon power in his body was forced out by him. Like the last radiance of the setting sun, this body that had lost half of its bones stood upright on the stone pillar, with the support of the demon power. His eyes were red, and he shouted angrily, How dare you? Red Madam immediately supported him from behind. You! But she did not know what to say. Then she heard Lord Donghai laughing from afar. This time, his voice was so loud that even Li Yunxin could hear it clearly. It's good that you care about her. Li Yunxin, you came to my Donghai and played tricks with Shinryu and Lifeless Immortal Sect. I was almost fooled by you, he said as he slowly rode the waves. But you didn't expect this day, did you? Now you are trapped by 150,000 soldiers, and there is no way to escape. Do you want to die here with that female demon? Hehe. I also know that we have been schemed against by Shinryu, and so have you. That Lord Haohan hates you to the core, and wanted to tear you into pieces and burn your bones to ashes. But your luck is good. Now we know that Lifeless Immortal Sect is coming here. We don't want to be attacked from all sides, so we asked me to persuade you to surrender. And I also cherish your talent, and I know that you hate Shinryu and Lifeless Immortal Sect. Now that things have come to this, no one will gain anything if we continue to fight. Instead, it will benefit others. When he said this, he had already moved forward a few miles. The demon generals behind him also followed carefully, but before this, they were ordered by Lord Haohan to watch over him. But now that they heard his words, they knew that he was not playing any tricks. Instead, they carefully protected the golden ball in his hand. They had seen the power of the female demon in red. They knew that if they moved forward, the female demon could attack them at any time. Lord Haohan continued in a deep voice. Now that Shangguan Yu is in my hands, I have an opportunity. You mother and son have a deep relationship. I will use her to persuade you to surrender. And it won't be a disgrace to your integrity if you surrender. You mainlanders, don't you pay the most attention to ethics? If you surrender, there is no unresolvable hatred between us. We are on the sea, and you are on the land. We are separate and have nothing to do with each other. When he said this, he was only about 10 miles away from the stone pillar. He stopped. When Red Lady attacked the demon generals, she was already 10 miles away in a flash. So if he moved forward, he really couldn't guarantee his safety. So he paused. But if you don't surrender, Shangguan Yu's life will be in danger. Do you want to stand here and watch her die by your hands? When Lord Haohan heard this, he heaved a sigh of relief. But after a sigh of relief, he snorted coldly and said disdainfully, I said before that he is a coward, was I wrong? Hehe. I keep hearing that he has a new wife, Madame Mingyue, and that he dotes on her dearly. But now that he had lost his power, where did that love go? Instead he said these things, bah. He spat. Everyone says he's a love-struck fool. That's all there is to it. The Dragon King of the North Sea sighed. Alas, alas, there's nothing we can do about it. It's normal, it's normal. He has nothing now, so he should be disheartened. But he can still pull himself together for us to use. That's good too. However, Lord Donghai's words seemed to have little effect on Li Yunxin. The two Dragon Kings heard Li Yunxin's voice. Lord Donghai, I will only give you one chance to deliver Shangguan Yu to me. I guarantee that you won't die. His voice sounded calm, but even Lord Boundless, who was dozens of miles away, could hear the bone-chilling coldness. Li Yunxin spat out each word very clearly and emphasized each word. This was the first time he heard Li Yunxin speak in such a tone since he came into contact with him. He sneered again. Humph. I'm afraid that coward won't be able to do anything. At this point, Li Yunxin is threatening us. Guarantee that he won't die. How can he guarantee that he won't die? After saying this, he stared at Li Yunxin, not letting go of any of his movements. Because for some reason an inexplicable feeling of palpitation came over him. In the words of ordinary people on the land, this feeling was called bad intuition. But Lord Boundless never believed in intuition. He only believed in his own strength and the soldiers in his hands. But now he was supported by the formation. The demon power in his body surged, and there was an army of 150,000 behind him. Where did this feeling of palpitation come from? He looked at Li Yunxin, who was standing tall and straight, and gradually frowned, feeling a wave of annoyance in his heart. But he also felt that it was a stupid idea to ask Lord Donghai to surrender. Chapter 698. However, from the very beginning, he had never thought that he would succeed. He just wanted the Dragon King of the East Sea to do it in front of the army, so that everyone would know what kind of person he was. He wanted to see if he still had the face to fight with him and face the demons of the ocean. So Lord Howhan took a deep breath subconsciously. He made up his mind. If this didn't work after another 15 minutes, he would make his move. The female demon was already seriously injured. He couldn't give her time to recover. He didn't know what Li Yunxin was up to, but he was afraid that a long delay would bring trouble. But the root cause was that the battle had dragged on for too long. He had never been so embarrassed in front of someone in his thousands of years of dominating the ocean. That must be the reason for his uneasiness and anxiety. This Li Yunxin was really unfathomable. He had to kill him with his own hands. Kill him. Only then could he calm down. Lord Howhan sneered. Give me a chance to live? Heh. How about, he said sternly. I'll give you a chance to live. His voice was even louder, like a clap of thunder. When he came out of the army, he was full of fighting spirit, and now he seemed to be even more excited. But when these words fell into Lord Howhan's ears, however, a thunderbolt suddenly exploded in his heart. You! At this moment, his mind suddenly became clear for no reason. Before this, his attention was occupied by how to deal with Li Yunxin as soon as possible, and he had no time to think about anything else. But now that he was focused on getting Li Yunxin to surrender, suddenly, many things became clear. He suddenly understood what was going on with Lord Howhan's strange excitement. What if he was really a love addict? A love addict, lost his fief, and knew that there would be no place for him in the ocean in the future. At first, he thought he had something to rely on. But not long ago, he learned that the Shinryu and lifeless immortal sect wanted to kill him. He had even fallen out with Madame Mingyue, whom he had doted on in every possible way, because of her son. As the old dragon of the North Sea said, there was nothing to lose. A person with nothing could either stay depressed or, Lord Vast Expanse's eyes went wide as he lunged forward and shouted, How dare you? But at the same time, Lord Donghai suddenly shot the golden ball in his palm toward the stone pillar, turned around and shouted, Li Yunxin, take her away. After that, his body suddenly expanded, and blood flowed out of his 7 apertures. In an instant, he absorbed the vast demonic army force in the world into his body, and forcefully pushed his realm to the limit that his body could endure. He roared again, I'll return your promise. See you in the next life. As soon as he turned around, he waved his hands and tore several demon generals behind him into pieces. Blood and flesh flew everywhere. At this moment, Lord Vast Expanse flew over and roared, I should have torn you apart long ago. But Lord Donghai was reaching the end of his lifespan. His mouth was full of blood, and he could not even speak. He waved his palms once more, creating a world-shaking wave to block the vast Dragon King. But the Dragon King of the North Sea and the Dragon King of Sichuan arrived soon after. With the 3 of them working together, the huge wave was immediately shattered into pieces of jade. Lord Donghai had pushed himself to the limit, and there was no way he could survive. He only had eyes for the enemy in front of him. hoping that Li Yunqin could escape with Shang Guanyu while he was buying time. But the three Dragon Kings would not do that. They did not care whether Li Yunqin got the golden ball or not. They just wanted to tear Lord Donghai into pieces, and then attack the stone pillar. But the Dragon King of the East Sea attacked very suddenly. Both Li Yunqin and Red Lady were stunned. They wondered if this was a trap to lure them into it. It was in that split second of time. A demon general, who was following behind Lord Donghai, and was a little further away from him, so he was not torn to pieces by his attack. Suddenly, his figure flashed and he stretched out his hand. From a few miles away, he used a divine ability to retrieve the golden ball that had been shot out. After the demon general succeeded, he immediately changed directions and flew towards the vast army, shouting, "Lord Boundless, I got it!" When Lord Donghai heard this, he immediately abandoned the three strong enemies in front of him and went to catch the demon general. But the general seemed to have a very high cultivation level, and Lord Donghai's attack did not hit him. He was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Just as he was about to snatch the golden ball back, Lord Haohan's fierce palm hit his back. "I'll fulfill your wish, you bastard." The force of this palm was forcefully endured, and 7 or 8 bones were immediately broken. Lord Donghai's body froze, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The other 2 Dragon Kings followed, and hit his back again. At this point, the people in charge of the army also realized that things were not going well. They immediately sent out flags to ban the demon power of the Dragon King of the East Sea. In this way, the demon general actually managed to escape into the formation with the golden ball. Poor Lord Donghai, now that he had lost all his demon power, and was seriously injured by the 3 palm hits, his body suddenly went limp. However, the Dragon King did not show any mercy. He grabbed his head and lifted his limp body in front of him, gritting his teeth. "Do you think you can escape? Ha! Escape? Bah! None of you can escape." But the person in his palm did not look at him. Instead, he turned his eyes with difficulty to look at the stone pillar. He saw that Li Yunqin and Red Lady were still standing there. They did not move or attack. It was as if what happened here had nothing to do with them. He was stunned. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and the demon power in his body was exhausted. Maybe it was the last radiance of the setting sun. He could speak now. "Why don't you leave?" he murmured. "Why? You or I?" The Dragon King clenched his fist. The head of the former king of Penglai of the East Sea exploded. His body hung limply. The Dragon King waved his hand again, and threw the headless body into the sea. He looked straight at the person on the stone pillar and shouted, "Li Yunqin, you want to fight with me? Now let's put an end to this." But at this time, Li Yunqin's face calmed down. He calmed down. It was not the coldness that came out of extreme worry just now. He did not pay attention to the Dragon King's words. He was looking at the military formation, the direction of the demon general who escaped with the golden ball. Red Lady opened her mouth. "I should have made a move just now, but it was too sudden. What should I do now?" As she spoke, she looked at the face of the person in front of her. Then she saw this kind of calmness. "Forget it." Li Yunqin narrowed his eyes and said as if talking to himself, "That was a mysterious realm just now." After a while he laughed. Red Lady did not know if he was sneering or laughing at something else. The meaning of this laughter was too complicated. The method of fishing out the golden ball. It was a painting technique. He laughed again. This time, it was indeed a sneer. "Lord Donghai. Demons are more affectionate and loyal than humans. It's a pity that he died in vain." Red Lady was in a daze for a while, but she finally understood. She sighed faintly. The affection of demons may not be less than that of humans. Hearing her words, Li Yunqin turned his head and glanced at her. He saw that Red Lady was looking at the sea where Lord Donghai had died, and her eyes were actually glistening with tears. He was stunned for a while, and the sneer on his face disappeared. Affection, the affection of demons. Alas! After thinking for a while he said, "Little you are, I've told you this before. If you still want to know, I'll tell you some things. But now alas, forget it." He shook his head. "Because of your affection of demons, I'll tell you." When he said these words, Lord Vast and the two dragon kings did not shout anymore. After all, they were proud of their status, and would not shout incessantly like the demon generals before. But at the same time, they seemed to be waiting for the other dragon kings to come. Lord Shihai died in the hands of Red Lady, and Lord Donghai lost his life in vain, because of infatuation that even he himself might not understand. Now there were only 6 dragon kings left on the sea. But these 6 had obtained the demon power in the formation, and their cultivation level was close to the Guangxing mystical realm. Moreover, their bodies were far stronger than ordinary great demons, and the power in their bodies was majestic. But they were not like the previous demon generals who were on the verge of death, so they could only steel their hearts and fight. If they really fought, whether it was fighting skills or experience, they would be very brilliant. Compared to those demon generals, perhaps the difference was like the difference between a warrior and a farmer. Because of this, when facing the heavily injured Red Madam and the dying Li Yunxin, he was able to temporarily hold his temper. After saying this, Li Yunxin looked at the 3 dragon kings and the other 3 who were rushing from the formation, and said in a low voice, "First, I'll tell you something that is related to you and me, Shinryu." He took a step forward. It looked like he was going to fight against the Lord of the Boundless. But this step was very slow. When he took it, he was still 3 steps away from the stone pillar. "Do you know Shinryu is drawn?" Red Lady was about to help him, but she was stunned. "What? Drawn?" Li Yunxin frowned. The bones in his legs were gone, and now he relied on the demon power to stand and walk. But this also made him feel more pain, so he had to stop and rest after this step. But although the expression on his face was painful, his words were light and breezy. "When I was in the city of Wei, I used the city of Wei to set up a formation, and took the dragon body for myself. I didn't think of this method, but someone else told me. At that time there were many things I didn't know, but slowly I knew more and more. That's what I realized." He rested for a while, and took the second step. The art saint appeared more than 2,000 years ago, and Shinryu also appeared more than 2,000 years ago. Is there any connection between the two? In fact, now I should have thought of it. But at that time, I didn't dare to think. Who dared to think that someone had such a big hand? His words were light and breezy, but in Red Lady's ears, it was like a thunder. This series of thunderclaps left her dumbstruck. For a moment, she didn't know what else to say, and could only ask again. "Big hand? Big hand?" Li Yunxin panted for a while, frowned and smiled. "When we were in Yunshan, we all saw the imperial painting of heaven. I lied to you at that time, saying it was not a big deal, but that painting convinced me." Chapter 699. In that map, the crypts in the 36 countries of Midland were marked in detail. But it was just a plan. I couldn't see anything just by looking at it. But later, I obtained the Heaven and Earth Mother Plate. Previously, Bai Yunxin told me that those crypts indeed formed a great array. But the great array used to seal the Golden Rock King. But when I used the Heaven and Earth Mother Plate to carefully look at the flow of spiritual power in the seal array, I realized that, at least those crypts in the 36 countries of Midland formed a meridian. Li Yunxin raised his hand to point at himself, and then at her. "You me. After transforming into a human, the meridians in my body are no different from those of a human. The crypts marked in the Huangyu Sutian map are probably the meridians between the Jingong Acupoint and the Snow Mountain and Sea of Qi in a human body. The person who told me the way to possess dragons said that dragons are different, so I can use painting methods to set up a formation to possess them. Since this thing is also a drawing of meridians, even if it's done in such an astonishing manner, using the mountains and rivers of this world to draw it, isn't it also the same thing as the dragon race that I've taken over?" Red Lady was still in a daze and couldn't say a word. Li Yunxin smiled again. "And I also know that painting Saint Qinzhao, before Shinryu was born, had traveled the world and walked all over the mountains and rivers. So like her, I walked from the Jin nation to the East Sea nation. I walked through the countries that weren't marked on the Huangyu Sutian map. There were also crypts there. Then I went to the sea. I found that there were also sea crypts on the sea, just like on land. At this time, when I went back to look at the Heaven and Earth mother plate, I was already sure that Shinryu was drawn by Chun Zhao. He guided the wishes of more than 1 billion people in another world to this place. Such power created the Taishang Shinryu 2,000 years ago. After saying this, he let out a long sigh with mixed feelings, and took another step forward. At this time, he was only 1 step away from the stone pillar. Red Lady looked at him in a daze. Another world with more than 1 billion people? More than 1 billion. Li Yunxin smiled. Compared to Shinryu, the vow that Emperor Li enjoys is just child's play. More than 1 billion strong faith. More than 1 billion people considered themselves to be the descendants of the dragon. It was not necessarily a belief in the existence of gods, but it was a deep, proud, and awe-inspiring belief. This power, you can't imagine how terrifying it is. As for that world, I'll tell you about it later. Alright, but what you have to do now? Li Yunxin turned to look at her. After I asked you to stop the owner of Southernwood Lodge, I went to Yunshan that night. Red Lady, who had just recovered from her shock, was stunned again by his words. Ah. It's very simple. It's just an undying dragon soul. Li Yunxin pointed at himself. Otherwise, why would I be like this? When Dragon's son dies, the dragon soul will be attracted to a part of his body and attached to it. I tried this process several times when I was in Tongtian Swamp. It's very fast. When I was in Tongtian Swamp, I didn't destroy the Mother Universe plate. That thing doesn't belong to this world. I couldn't destroy it even if I wanted to. I just disturbed the chi of heaven and earth, and ignited a few fires. At that time, I had already hidden one of my scales there. Li Yunxin narrowed his eyes and seemed to be very proud. His funny face was a little twisted. His time was indeed coming. Saying these words almost used up all his strength. The method is simple and violent. Death is enough. But people who cherish their lives won't do this. Every time they die, their divine soul will be damaged. I don't even remember how many times I have died. That's why I'm like this now. The dead Yunshan had used the Mother Universe Mother Earth plate to do some tricks. Just like in Tongtian Swamp. To steal the sky and change the sun. To reverse the situation. Now, although the spiritual power and chi of the sea are chaotic, it's the result of my manipulation. The whole ocean is my array. After doing all this, I will die and come back. But this is also the last time I can use this method. Because after today, I may no longer be a dragon. So those idiots still don't know that their array is already in my array. Li Yunxin's expression slowly became cold. Finally, he walked to the side of the stone pillar. They can't see it, and the people from Lifeless Immortal Sect can't see it either. They don't know the true face of Mount Lu, because they are in this mountain. But they are not in the mountain, but in this world. Call these idiots again and surround me. Use all your strength to squeeze out the demon power in your body. He raised his hand, and grasped the rich demon power in the air. He sneered and said, "Become my blood food." Red Lady was unable to fully comprehend the magnificence displayed in his few words. But just the part that she could understand was enough to dazzle her, and make her go into a trance. She wanted to ask about every word he said. But when she said the next sentence, the question about the previous sentence was replaced by a new one. In the end, she completely gave up thinking, and could only follow his train of thought. She even had to run to barely keep up. She told herself to give up many connections, and try to grasp the things that could be understood. But she still felt a certain emotion in her chest that was difficult to calm down. She took a deep breath and said, "Then, you dismantle your own bones." It's not difficult to draw and create something using the art of painting. Emptiness Realm can do it. The art saint used heaven and earth as a painting scroll, and mobilized the spiritual power between heaven and earth, to create the original Shinryu. It was indeed a great work, but it's not the key. The key is to make the thing I draw resemble a true dragon. It has terrifying power, divine abilities, and a soul. The art of painting existed for 1,000 years. The reason why no one except the art saint could do it was because it needed a special core. This core shouldered the task of guiding the wish power of another world to this world. Li Yunxin said in a deep voice, "I made myself the core. I transformed into a human with 206 bones. Previously, I didn't have much demonic power left, so I used my mind to control the godly weapons that I brought from Cloud Mountain to fight against those demon generals. Humph. Those idiots thought they were playing a game of attrition and rolling knives with me. But I used their demonic power to refine those godly weapons. When I was done, I threw them down. In total, I lost 103. Just now you fought against those demon generals. When they died, their demonic power exploded, and I used the demonic power to refine the bones in my body. In total, I dug out 103 bones. Right now, there are 103 Dharma treasures in the body of that thing in the sea, and 103 of my bones. I have already refined those Dharma treasures into my body. Now I have him in me, and he has me in him. I am its core. Li Yunxin took a deep breath and said, "The art saint painted Shinryu. She chose well." The reverence of more than 1 billion people led to the realm of Grand Supreme. But in that world, there was also another thing. The number of his believers is also around 1 billion. Although the power of faith isn't reverence, it's another kind of love that isn't inferior to reverence. He turned to look at Red Lady and asked, "Do you want to know what it is?" The female demon slowly lowered her head and glanced at the ground beneath their feet. Her eyes were filled with reverence, as well as some other emotions that even she herself couldn't describe. It was a kind of deep passion that came from the possibility of participating in something that was destined to shake the world and overturn the universe. She was silent for a full 3 breaths before she raised her head again and said, "I do." Then step back a little. Qin Fengzi was knocked unconscious by you. Take him with you, and step back by 5 kilometers. The female demon immediately flew away. Li Yunxin took the final step. He stepped into the void in front of the stone pillar. At this time, the 3 dragon kings who rushed over from the army were finally 40 kilometers away. Li Yunxin, the boundless dragon king said in a deep voice for the last time, "I've given you a lot of time to say goodbye to that female demon. Now it's time to put an end to this matter, right?" A gust of wind rose from the surface of the ocean. The wind howled, causing everyone's clothes to flutter loudly. Li Yunxin lowered his head slightly. His body also lowered slightly. He placed his hand on the edge of the stone pillar. After gently caressing it for a while, he suddenly sighed and muttered to himself, "What a pity! There should have been music here." In the next moment, he suddenly raised his hand, and his eyes shone brightly as he looked at the boundless Lord. "Very well, then let's put an end to this matter. Great sage, show yourself." Because of his words, the atmosphere between the sea and the sky changed dramatically. The dense demonic energy in the vast army originally had 2 uses. One was to seal off Li Yunxin's path of retreat, so that he couldn't escape through the sky or the water. The other was to fill the bodies of the 6 dragon kings, so that their realms would surpass the level of mystery of expanse. Such a terrible power naturally wouldn't be easily controlled by others. The control of this power in the army was almost as strong as the power itself. But at this moment, something almost impossible happened. The demonic energy in the army suddenly crazily gathered towards Li Yunxin. The demon soldiers in the army contributed their own demonic energy. Originally, it was like one person slowly exerting his strength. Once a while a rest. This way, the demonic energy could be endlessly circulated. Before this, their power had already accumulated to an astonishing level in the army. Even though the 6 dragon kings had absorbed a lot of it, they still only used a small part of it. But at this moment, the demonic energy in the army was almost sucked clean in 3 breaths. If it wasn't for the fact that the 6 dragon kings had already surpassed the profound realm, and were only slightly inferior to Red Lady at her peak, the demonic power in their bodies would have been sucked away. But the demon soldiers in the army weren't as strong as them. It was more like they had originally opened a small valve in their bodies and contributed their strength. Now that this sudden change had occurred, how could they react in time? Chapter 700. The space Li Yunxin was in seemed to have turned into a bottomless pit. Not only did it suck away the power in the formation, it also began to suck away the power in their bodies. At this moment, it was no longer a matter of taking a break, It was a frenzied plundering. It only took a breath's time. The surface of the ocean suddenly became empty. The demon power in the body of the nearly 150,000 demon soldiers was sucked clean. They immediately turned into 150,000 dried corpses and sank into the water. Their bodies were dead, and their souls left their bodies. But before they could wake up from their muddle-headed state, their souls were also sucked away and turned into even more powerful demon power. At this time, Li Yunxin's words were still echoing on the surface of the ocean, and the echo had yet to disperse. The 6 dragon kings were also slightly stunned after hearing his words. They didn't know which expert he had invited when he said show up, and if there was any unexpected help. However, after this momentary stupor, their army of 150,000 was completely annihilated. Zither Monarch, who was further away, also felt this change. At this moment, she finally realized where the subtle sense of familiarity in the formation came from. Wasn't it the scene under Cloud Mountain, when Li Yunxin controlled the Heaven and Earth Mother Plate, causing the flow of qi between heaven and earth, and sucking away all the demon power that gathered in her body? However, the powerful force on the surface of the ocean was many times stronger than that of Yunshan at that time. How could Li Yunxin bear it? But she didn't dare to think further. She could only rejoice that she was cautious enough and didn't stay with those idiots. Otherwise, she didn't know what kind of suffering she would have to suffer today. She didn't even dare to stop and flew away. Further away, there were various demon kings who were originally watching. The demon kings also felt this change, but they weren't as perceptive as Zither Monarch. Just when they were wondering what had happened in front of them that caused the vast Dragon King's army of 100,000 to suddenly disappear. Suddenly, the entire surface of the ocean began to shake violently, because the stone pillar that Li Yunxin had been standing on was slowly rising. Li Yunxin also rose with the stone pillar. It was as if he was grabbing the pillar and pulling it out of the sea. His body began to emit a strong light, and gradually became transparent in this strong light. 4 breaths ago, the 6 dragon kings were still surrounded by the army. However, with just one sentence from Li Yunxin, the 150,000 demon soldiers all disappeared into the sea. They felt like they were dreaming, but even in his dreams, it would not be so bizarre. However, in the end, he sensed that Li Yunxin's body was beginning to overflow with violent demonic power. As soon as the demonic power entered his body, it began to reconstruct his muscles, bones, and organs. As the two forces collided, a mysterious light erupted, illuminating his entire body. They could almost see every process that was happening in his body. Lord Vast Expanse was the first to react. His voice was out of tune due to extreme shock and panic. It was as if someone had grabbed him by the neck and squeezed him out. How can't be? Kill him. No. Go. No. Kill him. His first thought was, how can this be? But he immediately realized that it was useless to think about this now. His second thought was to kill him. But he also realized that with such a drastic change, Li Yunxin must have a plan to kill him. So his third thought was to escape. When this thought appeared, it was as if his shout had given him an outlet for the nervous emotions that were pushing him to the brink of collapse. His mind actually became clear in an instant. I can't leave. Where can I go without this army? Just a quarter of an hour ago, Lord Eastern Sea, who had lost everything, insisted on dying. At that time he laughed at his stupidity, but now Lord Vast Expanse Dragon King truly experienced what he felt. He had already lost the vast sea and his army. There was no place for him on the sea. If he didn't kill Li Yunxin, what else could he do? As soon as these words came out of his mouth, his heart came out, and his timidity was swept away. A person who had lost everything had nothing to lose. This made him calmer. He saw the stone pillar rise faster and faster, and the light inside Li Yunxin's body became brighter and brighter. But he didn't move at all. He's controlling the array. Lord Vast Expanse Dragon King finally finished his sentence. If this array succeeds, he will definitely die. Go kill him now and stop this array. After saying this, he roared and immediately pounced on Li Yunxin. The other 5 Dragon Kings reacted a little slower, but they immediately understood Lord Vast Expanse's intention. Who among them didn't do the same? So they staked everything on this one throw and roared, following closely behind. More than 40 kilometers. For the 5 dragon kings who had surpassed the realm of profound expanse, they only needed to spend the time of 4 breaths, and count to 4 in their hearts. When the first count was over, half of the stone pillar was already out of the water. When the second count was over, the stone pillar was practically flying. When the third count was over, the stone pillar was like a steel needle piercing the blue sky on the surface of the ocean. It was so tall that mist condensed from countless tiny water droplets gathered at the top. The 6 dragon kings were too close and couldn't feel it. But the monster kings who were extremely far away could see that the entire sea surface had become a small mountain, rising from the surface of the ocean. They finally realized that the situation wasn't good and began to flee. But at this time, the 4th count was over. The part below the stone pillar was out of the ocean. It looked like a fist holding the stone pillar. There was something under it. A terrifyingly huge thing. Lord Vast Expanse Dragon King's first attack was aimed at Li Yunxin. This Way River Dragon King, who was seriously injured and on the verge of death just now, was now surrounded by mysterious light and full of spiritual power. This blow was about to hit his body, but it was blocked by a wave of majestic demonic power. It was as if his aura and the incomparably huge thing under the stone pillar had merged into one. Lord Boundless actually couldn't break through his protective spiritual power. They were almost face to face. Li Yunxin looked at him calmly. In the roar that almost covered all other sounds, he sighed softly. It's useless. You're dead. It's better to run now and live a little longer. But Lord Vast Expanse's face was already twisted. He shouted in front of Li Yunxin. You're the one who's going to die today. Since his all-out attack didn't hit, he immediately knew that he couldn't waste any more time on Li Yunxin. This wasn't a weak spot, but there must be a weak spot somewhere else. He suddenly dived down, causing a series of explosions in the air, and hit the thing that was rising from under the stone pillar. That terrifyingly huge thing was wrapped in rocks, and now half of it had already risen out of the ocean. The ocean surface shook, and huge waves surged up as if it was boiling. The exposed half of its body couldn't be seen clearly, but it was even bigger than an entire mountain. In front of it, the Vast Expanse Dragon King's tall and sturdy figure was like a small tree on a mountain. But what surprised him was, it was big, but it was extremely fragile. With a resolute mind, he hit it head on. But he didn't feel the slightest hindrance. With just one hit, he was pushed more than 100 feet deep. Spiderweb-like cracks immediately spread on the surface of the rock. And with another explosion, a piece the size of a small mountain was blown off. Filled with despair and joy, he shouted, "Break this thing!" Among the 6 dragon kings, his cultivation was the highest. After he exchanged blows with Li Yunxin and blew off a piece of this huge thing, the other 5 finally arrived. Seeing this scene, in order to save their lives, they didn't say anything else. Together with Lord Vast Expanse, they attacked the gap with all their strength. In just 3 breaths' time, they had blown off half of this huge thing. At this time, this thing was still rising, but its momentum was already very slow. But the seawater below was boiling even more violently. Before it seemed to be boiling, but now it was really boiling. The drastic change here had triggered the true fire at the bottom of the sea. Lava spurted out, causing the water under the water to gradually turn orange, as if it would explode in the next moment. Li Yunxin's chi activity is one with this thing. He is tempering his muscles, bones, skin, and flesh. Lord Vast Expanse shouted as he attacked with all his strength, as if to encourage himself and the other 5 to dispel the boundless fear in his heart. The key to reconstructing his body is this thing. Even if we blow this thing up, he won't be able to succeed. How terrifying was the power of 6 existences who had surpassed the realm of profound expanse, using all their strength to blow off a small mountain. Even if the rocks on this mountain were not ordinary rocks, and were protected by spiritual power, and were much tougher than ordinary steel, they only needed a dozen breaths' time to blow through it. The deeper they went, the harder the rocks were, and the denser the spiritual power was. But the more it was so, the more ecstatic Lord Vast Expanse was. when he punched 3 more times and finally blew off the almost indestructible rock in the center. But he only saw a small hole. The 6 people were all stunned. The small hole looked like a human. From the outline it looked like a child. But apart from this hole, there was nothing else. Lord Vast Expanse subconsciously looked at his fists. He had such a strong body, but he looked like a laborer in the human world. His fists were badly mutilated, and there were countless cuts on them from the rocks. A coldness as sharp as a knife flashed through his heart. He was stunned for a moment. Not good. He shot out of the stone mountain and returned to the sky. He saw that Li Yunqin was standing on the stone pillar again. Beside him, there was another person. It looked like a person. It was the size of a child. It wore a phoenix feather purple gold crown on its head, a golden chainmail, and a pair of lotus root cloud walking shoes. The wind and clouds above the stone pillar surged, but the 2 tail feathers on its head only trembled slightly, as if the wind couldn't move them. But it was a monkey with a golden stick in its hand. It seemed that while the 6 dragon kings were doing their best to survive, Li Yunqin had been talking to the monkey for a while. Now that Lord Vast Expanse and the other 5 people had reappeared several zhang away, it only glanced at them, as if they were just passers-by. Look, I was right. They thought you were still down there, and they had a hard time just now. This is the disadvantage of being ignorant. You were born in a stone. But this stone is only to gather spiritual energy for you. You were born. What's so important about this pile of stones? As Li Yunqin spoke to the monkey, he glanced at the dragon kings. Don't you think so? But at this moment, all of Lord Vast Expanse's attention was on the little monkey. The golden armored monkey squatted next to the stone pillar, its back facing Li Yunqin. Its arms were stretched out on its knees, and it held the golden stick in its hand. Its face was dark. Its expression could even be described as sinister. It stared at the 6 dragon kings. An astonishing and terrifying aura emanated from its small body. Chapter 701. You, Lord Vast Expanse glared at the monkey, then looked at Li Yunqin. What is he? The monkey lowered his head slightly, as if he was very dissatisfied with this sentence. This made his expression even more terrifying and resentful. Dragon King took a step back subconsciously, then realized he had been frightened by a monkey demon. Thing. Li Yunqin laughed. If Grand Supreme experts are also things, what are you? Grand Supreme? The 6 dragon kings were stunned. Lord Vast Expanse looked to his left and right. There was nothing but clouds. Then he realized that Li Yunqin was still talking about this monkey. Just a monkey demon, just. Dragon King frowned. Grand Supreme. Do you know what Grand Supreme is? But after saying this, he couldn't think of anything else to say. His mind was a mess, and thousands of voices exploded at the same time. He looked at the monkey demon again. His aura was indeed shocking, but he couldn't feel the demonic power in his body. Existences with extremely high cultivation could indeed restrain their spiritual and demonic aura, so that none of it was leaked. But he looked at Li Yunqin. This Li Yunqin was no longer seriously injured, and Lord Vast Expanse didn't know how he did it. But he had only returned to the peak of Shi mystical realm. In front of the 6 of them, he was nothing. A thought slowly grew in his mind. A thought that grew stronger because of the desire to live. This time could it be Li Yunqin's scheme again? He was used to schemes. He used some unknown method to create such a huge commotion, and then used his unknown supernatural power in the 50-kilometer array to borrow the momentum to destroy the demon army. Shi mystical realm could do it. It could do it, right? Then, he used the monkey demon's disguise to scare him away. Could it be like this? If so, they could still live. But Li Yunqin sneered. Monkey demon? This is inner monkey Wukong, the great sage, heaven's equal. Since he's a great sage, he's naturally a grand supreme expert. Do you know, demon, you're so long-winded. Just as Li Yunqin was halfway through his sentence, and his tone became increasingly high-spirited, the monkey suddenly spoke. With a gloomy face, the forefinger of the hand that held the golden cudgel struck rapidly against the surface of the cudgel. He seemed very impatient. Are you going to fight or not? Li Yunqing coughed. Great sage, this is your first battle in this world. You have to have a good reason. Monkey turned his head slowly and glared at Li Yunqing. If you continue to be so long-winded, I'll kill you too. Li Yunqing sighed. Great sage, didn't I tell you many times just now? In your body, there are my 103 bones, and 103 divine weapons that I have refined into my body. In my body, there are also 103 bones, and also the soul essence of 103 divine weapons. Now that our lives are linked, you are in me, and I am in you. I am your core. If you die, I'll be seriously injured at most. But if I die, your core in this world will be gone, and you won't be able to live. You've already said something like killing me 4 times since we met. It's very hurtful. We'll be together for a long time in the future. Monkey suddenly turned his head and covered his ears, shouting, Long-winded, 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 long-winded. He jumped up as he shouted, staring at the 6th Dragon King. These demons can be fought, right? Are you going to fight or not? These demons dared to destroy the spirit stone that I'm residing in. Li Yunqing spread his hands and sighed helplessly. Fine. But he was interrupted by Lord Haohan again. Li Yunqing, you're wasting your time again, aren't you? He glared at him, and his eyes slowly lit up with eagerness and expectation. He pointed at the monkey. He wants to fight me, but you don't allow it. You're even acting like this. It's your trick again, isn't it? I won't give you another chance this time. Li Yunqing was stunned. Then he sighed. Fine. I've been bullied for so many days, and I wanted to vent my anger by saying something. But you're all more impatient than the last. Fine, 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 fine. I'm being long-winded. It's your fault that you're so scared that you even have such thoughts. In order to survive, you still have to believe it. Then his expression turned cold. However, Lord Boundless. But Lord Haohan, the great sage's fight or not isn't what you're talking about. Fighting with fists and kicks is called fighting. When he's talking about beating, he's talking about beating you to death with a stick. Zai, great sage, let's fight. As soon as these words came out, an incomparably violent demon power instantly swept across the surface of the ocean. The sea under the stone mountain was already boiling, as if an unimaginable amount of magma was about to explode in the next moment. But now, it was instantly pressed into an incomparably smooth mirror, and even the light at the bottom of the sea was suddenly extinguished. Not even a single wave could stir. Far away, the demon kings and their demon soldiers were retreating, but they retreated too late. Those who were below the true state and had low cultivation levels, once they were hit by this demon power, they would bleed from their 7 orifices and die immediately. Once the shocking demon power in their bodies erupted, the faces of the 6 Dragon Kings immediately turned ashen, and they retreated immediately. At this moment of life and death, the 6 experts who had surpassed the profound state of life retreated tens of miles away, and with tacit understanding, they split up and ran away. But the great sage didn't even bother to chase after them. With a kick, he raised the stick that was propped on the ground, stood on the spot, and waved with one hand. With a loud bang, the great ocean dragon king, who was already 25 miles away, exploded into a ball of blood and flesh. With another wave, the Sichuan dragon king, who was 60 miles away, died. With another twist of the golden stick, the North Sea dragon king and the Buhai dragon king died. At this moment, the vast dragon king and the dragon king of Chu Liao finally escaped from Li Yunqing's 50-mile formation. The monkey king took a step forward and waved his stick again. At the intersection of the sea and the sky, 2 balls of golden light exploded like the previous 4 balls. Hence, the ocean became silent again. The monkey king stared into the distance for a while. There are still some demons further away. Should we fight? Li Yunqing realized that he was talking about the demon kings, who were originally watching the battle, and were now fleeing in all directions. But after a while he said, Forget it. We still have some use for them. He was shocked by the power displayed by the great sage. Even though he had already mentally prepared himself, even though the Monkey King was known for his extremely powerful martial arts in his previous world. But it was indeed at this moment when the Monkey King killed the physical body of a profound state of life with one strike, that he truly experienced the power of the Taishang. No wonder the Shinria back then was able to sweep through the world with an unstoppable force. Then he thought about the two false sages on Cloud Mountain. He originally thought that their strength could be considered half-step Taishang, but now it was simply laughable. The Monkey King snorted, looking uninterested. Forget it. I can't fight either. They're too weak, too weak. Boring, boring. After saying that, he stared at Li Yunxin. What else do you have to say? Hurry up and say it. If there's nothing else, I'll go play. For the time being, there's nothing else, Li Yunxin said with a smile. But where do you want to go, great sage? I'm free to roam the world. The Monkey King curled his lips. I'm going. After saying that, an auspicious cloud suddenly appeared under his feet, and his figure flashed and he left. However, Li Yunxin didn't say anything, nor did he do anything. He only smiled and watched with his hands behind his back. He saw, the Monkey King was still in his original spot. His figure flickered and became blurry, but he couldn't go anywhere. In the next moment, the Monkey King stopped and flew into a rage. He opened his mouth wide, revealing two long canine teeth, and shouted, Demon! What tricks are you playing? That's why I said that you have to listen to me patiently in the future. Li Yunxin smiled and sighed. I've said it since the beginning. Our lives are related. You're in me and I'm in you. I will be the formation eye to summon you, and I will also be your core. Of course I am one with you, though we seem to be two at present. But it's more like two personalities who know each other. As he spoke, he slowly took 2 steps with his hands behind his back. He looked at the furious Monkey King and said, How the formation operates naturally depends on how the formation eye of the main formation is controlled, which is also my intention. Sigh, great sage, you can't go anywhere now. If I have to say where I want to see it, you tell me. I'll take you there after I'm done with my business. We'll have company, and I'll tell you about the country. It won't be a lonely journey. Okay. The Monkey King stared at him with an ominous glint in its fiery eyes. In the next moment, he abruptly raised his golden staff. This is the end of you, demon. His golden rod had just killed 6 Dragon King cultivators in the realm of life and mystery. However, Li Yunxin didn't even blink when facing the golden rod. You won't. His words were like a spell. The Monkey King held the golden rod so tightly that it made cracking sounds. But it didn't hit him. The Monkey King gritted his teeth, but he couldn't say a word. It was as if some invisible power had sealed him firmly. But what kind of power could seal a Grand Supreme? This damn Li Yunxin was going to say a lot of things just now, but he was interrupted. Now that he finally had a chance to speak, he immediately began to talk. Great sage, you definitely haven't experienced that kind of experience, but almost every mortal has. When you're extremely sleepy, you're woken up. You shout in your heart that it's time to get up, or it'll be too late. Get up, get up, get up. But as you shout you're sleepy, you just want to continue sleeping, and your body doesn't seem to listen to you. People usually think that the quilt and the bed cast a sorcery, trapping you and making you unable to get up. But in fact, it's not like that. It's just that your consciousness is struggling. After struggling for a while, it's very likely that you'll fall asleep again while shouting to get up. When you wake up, it's really too late. Then, you'll shout to die again. Our current situation is similar to that, but it's an upgraded version. You shout in your heart that you want to kill this demon with one strike. But while you think about it, you can't do it for some reason. It's not because you're hesitant or afraid. It's just that you can't do it. Isn't it amazing? This is because I'm in you, and you're in me. Subconsciously, people don't want to hurt themselves. I just added something to the array to infinitely strengthen this kind of consciousness. After all, it's my profession. Speaking of this, Li Yunxin stopped laughing and became serious. In fact, great sage, if you spend more time with me, you'll find that I'm not only humorous but also interesting. I can also take you everywhere to stir up trouble and kill people. It's very interesting. Chapter 702. However, the Monkey King still didn't say anything. He just put down the stick and stared at him, as if he wanted to kill him. But no matter how he moved his mouth, it seemed like it was sealed. Li Yunxin sighed. I know you're uninhibited and love freedom. Who doesn't? That's why I didn't give you a band-tightening spell. That's very kind of you. Say what you want to say. Say what you want to say. Don't hold it in. I know what's on your mind only if you say it. Let's talk more in the future. After all, we're guests in a foreign land. You shut up. The monkey finally said something, but it was so loud that Li Yunxin couldn't breathe, and took several steps back. Don't even think about it, demon. Don't even think about it. Aha! The Monkey King was so angry that he kept spinning on the spot, knocking the ground with his golden stick. But the ground was also a part of the spirit stone that he once resided in, so he couldn't bear to break it. After a while, he suddenly looked up at Li Yunxin and narrowed his eyes. Good ye demon? Don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. He looked around again, and finally fixed his eyes on Li Yunxin. Don't even think about asking me to do anything. After shouting this, his body suddenly turned into a golden light, and entered Li Yunxin's ears. He heard a buzzing sound in his ears. I'll watch someone kill you. He didn't say anything else. Li Yunxin picked his ears. Of course, he couldn't take anything out. He smiled, put down his hands, and let out a long breath. A great sage with a temper was a good great sage. He wasn't afraid of him having a temper. But he was afraid that he was a soulless, empty shell. That meant that his original idea was wrong, and he had failed. But now, it seemed that he had succeeded. He perfectly repeated what the art Saint Chen Zhao had done, and maybe even better. In this world, he created the great sage, heaven's equal, Sun Wukong. Moreover, when he was talking to the great sage, he realized that there seemed to be some vague memories of his original world in the great sage's mind. This was the great sage, heaven's equal. The great sage who had accompanied him through his ignorant and dim childhood. Because of this, he was glad that he didn't come up with anything else. In fact, there were even stronger candidates. For example, the gods of certain religions in his original world. The number of worshippers of these deities could be in the billions, and their faith was even greater than that of Shinryu and the great sage. But he didn't do so because the art saint didn't do it. Li Yunxin only needed to think for a moment to guess what the art saint was thinking. At the same time, it was also his own. Uncontrollable. If the created object succeeded, it would have its own consciousness and consciousness. But if the gods in his original world really existed in his original world, how could the thoughts of ordinary people be able to guess? It was just like how ants could not understand the thoughts of humans. Furthermore, the god with the strongest willpower in that world was said to have wiped out all the humans in the world, until only 2 were left. He even prophesied that one day, all of them would be destroyed. Once he was brought into this world, he would see that there were demons and ghosts everywhere. And there wasn't even a cycle of retribution. He would probably start to purify them immediately. How could he be a helper then? On the other hand, this great sage was a sentimental person with a pure heart. Furthermore, he was a demon. As for principles, there are. But he wasn't stubborn. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been recruited by the heavenly court. When he was angry, he was fierce. But his temper came and went quickly, and he was easy to coax. Coaxing people, he was the best. After going through these thoughts in his mind, Li Yunxin raised his voice and said, Little you are, come out. After about 3 breaths of time, Li Xinyu appeared. Qin Fengzi was carried in her hands, and he had already woken up. And he looked like he had lost his soul. The female demon carefully landed on the stone pillar, and threw Qin Fengzi aside. She looked around, and then lowered her voice. You, that thing, where did it go? Her face was full of anxiety and unease. Ever since she fused with the dragon soul, and reached the peak of the profound realm, she rarely saw this kind of expression. But at least she could still speak. Qin Fengzi didn't move after being thrown to the ground, and stared at Li Yunxin in shock. These 2 people had followed Li Yunxin's instructions and hid. They also saw the 6 Dragon Kings' deaths from afar. Experts who had surpassed the profound realm were killed by the existence summoned by Li Yunxin with a stick. This kind of shock was not something ordinary people could understand. The 2 people were shocked differently. Red Lady was shocked by the great sage's realm. And Qin Fengzi was shocked by Li Yunqin's methods. He was also good at formations. When he was in the lifeless immortal sect, he was proud of this. But now that he saw the power of Li Yunqin's formation, what else was there to say? This, how could it be a formation made by a human? Li Yunqin smiled. Don't call him that thing, he will get angry. His real name is Sun Wukong. You can just call him Great Sage. Red Lady was in a daze for a while. Actually, she wanted to ask about the origin of this great sage, and how he was created. She also wanted to ask what Li Yunqin meant by that world. But before that, Li Yunqin had told her enough. She hesitated for a while, and finally gave up the idea. Then she carefully looked at the man in front of her. But why are you still? Profound realm? Later, she knew what Li Yunqin had done under the Cloud Mountain. She also knew that he had created the 9th young master, who was at the peak of the true state, and Lu Gongzan, who had mastered the profound realm. The demonic power on the sea just now was many times stronger than under the Cloud Mountain. Why did he? Li Yunqin waved his hand. I don't mean anything. Being strong has its own advantages, and being weak also has its own advantages. Besides, he pointed to his ear, I am now one with this great sage, and I can be said to have copper muscles and iron bones. My body may be stronger than the previous dragon body. What am I now? I am neither dragon son nor a human. I can be considered as a new species. The dragons were also a new species. So I am not very sure what will happen if I enter the next realm at this time. Besides, even if I am at the peak of the profound realm, I still don't know how people like us can cultivate to the Grand Supreme. It is better to use it to fill the gap of this great sage. With him, I have nothing to be afraid of. As soon as he finished speaking, a cold snort sounded in his ear. Bah! Don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. Li Yunqin sighed and tapped the back of his head a few times, to make the sound in this ear not so loud. Otherwise, it was not a good thing to be shocked and dizzy all the time. Red Lady nodded. After hesitating for a while, she looked at the distant sea. But just now, Li Chunfeng he ran away. He is not that stupid. Li Yunqin snorted. When he took Shengguan Yu away, those Dragon King did not recognize him, and the demons in the formation must not be able to stop him. Just as well. Let him see that I am no longer at his mercy now. I want to know what he is going to do. I will catch him one day and ask him face to face. When Li Yunqin said these words, his tone became cold. Red Lady said in a low voice, before the East Sea Dragon King died, he asked you to take your mother away, and he risked his life to stop you. He also said he wanted to repay his promise. Yunqin, your mother must still miss you. Li Yunqin was silent for a while, then sighed. Forget it. Let's not think about it for now. We still have things to do. After saying this, he stood up and winked at Red Lady. Little Yor, let's play a game. A game? A game of catching fish. Li Yunqin said with a smile. That great sage destroyed their bodies. But the reason why I killed one with a stick is that I controlled the chi of heaven and earth to seal their divine soul and demonic power. Otherwise, it would take more effort. Oh ha, good. Next time when you meet someone stronger, you will know whether I am bragging or not. Red Lady stared at his ear. He is talking here. Yes. Private space, constant temperature and humidity. It is a good place. The great sage must like it very much. Li Yunqin said with a smile. Go on. Their divine soul and demonic power have been sealed by me. So even if their bodies are gone, their souls are still there. Right now there are 6 of them on the sea. Let's catch them separately. Let's see who can catch the most, okay? Red Lady blinked her eyes, seemed to be interested in this game. What happens after we catch them? Li Yunqin touched his hand, took out a small lantern and handed it to her. He took out a small lantern and handed it to her. Keep it here. It was for their ghosts that I spent so much effort. Don't break them. Then let's go. Li Yunqin said and left. As soon as his voice fell, he appeared several miles away. Red Lady looked at him for a while on the stone pillar, and realized that his injuries had indeed recovered. He was originally injured in his soul, so now it was probably as he said, He was already a completely different existence from the dragon clan. So the smile on her face faded a little. But soon she smiled again, let out a sigh and left. Only Qin Fengzi was left on the stone pillar alone, as if he was in a dream. He didn't know where he should go. After hearing so many secrets, if he was caught, would Li Yunqing kill him? But he didn't even leave a restriction on him. Did he deliberately let him go? So he was in a daze. Qin Fengzi didn't say anything, but only talked about the mighty Dragon King. Li Yunqing really wasn't bragging. Before he asked the great sage to attack, he had indeed used a formation to seal the demonic power and divine soul of the 6 Dragon Kings. But the seal didn't stop people from using their demonic power. The 6 Dragon Kings didn't notice anything unusual. They were still like ordinary people, and even felt that they were stronger, because the demonic power in their bodies was protecting their divine soul. It made them feel that their foundation was stable. If they had the chance to fight with the great sage, they would probably feel that there was a part of their body that they couldn't use. But when they sensed the Monkey King's violent aura, they immediately ran away, not even having the chance to fight. Lord Haohan's physical body was smashed by the rod, but his divine soul was protected by the demonic power, so it wasn't too damaged. This first gave him a huge shock, and then he repeatedly exclaimed in his heart that he was lucky. He thought that it must be because of the powerful demonic power in the vast formation that filled his body, which allowed him to retain his consciousness and not become a muddle-headed ghost. Since that was the case, he didn't dare to stay any longer, and only dived into the water, heading towards the direction of the vast sea. He had operated the vast sea for many years, so he naturally had some leeway. He even hid some magic treasures and shelters in some secret places, just in case he needed them. He didn't expect that they would come in handy today. Chapter 703. Compared to the body, the soul was much lighter. Although he had lost all his demon power, it was also because of this convenience that his speed didn't slow down much. Moreover, he didn't need to eat or drink. Thus, after running wildly for 3 days, he finally entered the vast ocean. Along the way, he met many demons. Originally, he was organized by the various demon kings on the sea to go sightseeing, to see the Dragon King on the sea encircle the Dragon King on land. On one hand, he wanted to see the strength of the Dragon King, and on the other hand, he wanted to have something to talk about in the future. But who would have thought that this trip almost turned into a journey of death? That Lu Ko actually invited such a terrifying existence from who knows where. Now that the vast army was gone, even the various wild demon kings suffered heavy losses. How could they still have the mood to sightsee? They all hurried back to their nests to suppress the demons below, to prevent any changes from happening while they weren't there. It could be said that every family had their own problems. Lord Haohan secretly listened along the way. He was so angry that his soul almost left his body. Oh no, he already left his body. Those damned demons were like grass on the wall. They all talked about how strong Li Yunqing was, how calm, and how he wasn't afraid in the face of danger. They also talked about how the 150,000 soldiers surrounded him for many days, but didn't dare to make a move because they were afraid of his power. In the end, they finally mustered up the courage to try, but they ended up being defeated and killed. They all forgot about the scene of them watching the commotion earlier, and also forgot about the great sage that Li Yunqing invited, who killed all their soldiers when his demon power exploded. But anger was one thing. He knew what those cowards were planning. This Li Yunqing swept the Dragon King of the 9 seas. Wouldn't his next step be to rule the ocean? At least half of the ocean. Those cowards still had to make a living on the ocean. They weren't going to fall at the sight of the wind and curry favor with the future lord. Because of this, Lord Haohan didn't dare to show his face. Even when he occasionally ran into a few demons that bowed to him in order to enter the vast army, he didn't show his face to ask for help, but hid. He was afraid that those fellows would fight with him and capture him to offer to that Li Yunqing. He ran like this for another 2 days. Along the way, while listening to that hateful Li Yunqing's name spread all over the ocean, he would occasionally bump into little monsters that had just matured and kill them, extracting their demonic power, so that he could become stronger. Those little demons weren't even at the emptiness realm. The demonic power it could provide was extremely weak. But the reason he was so hungry was because he was now heading towards his northern palace. Baigong was actually a homonym for Baigong. About 400 years ago, when he was patrolling in the sea, he found a giant seashell. When it matured, it grew to the size of a palace. The shell spirit's cultivation level was low, but its shell was extremely hard. He refined it into a palace while it was still alive. This refined palace was only the size of a millstone, but it was a completely different world inside. Thus, Lord Vast Expanse used the Northern Palace to hide his demon body. After all, the 9 dragon kings of the sea were all sealed by the Shinryu god. This title was different from the titles of the land dragon sun. The dragon princes of the continent were given territories and titles. But this territory might not be able to be defended. For example, the 9th young master. But even if the territory was gone, the land dragon sun was still the dragon sun. But the dragon kings of the sea, such as the Lord of the East Sea, used to be a small demon general under the command of goddess Punglai. He was a creature of the sea that gained intelligence and became a human. When Shinryu sealed him, he sealed his original soul with the chi of the heavens and earth in the sea, becoming the Lord of the East Sea. Lord Vast Expanse was in the same situation. Therefore, although his Lord Vast Expanse's dragon body was gone, the demon body he had when he was a little demon was still well kept. In the Northern Palace, he originally thought that if one day he was in trouble, at least he would have a body to rely on. He didn't expect to use it now. He didn't know if he should be sad or happy. However, the Dragon King of the East Sea had always been competitive. After running like this for 5 days, the initial fear in his heart slowly faded. But his hatred burned even more fiercely. That Li Yunqin destroyed his army, destroyed his dragon body. Now that he was lucky enough to keep his soul, how could he just let it go? This hatred and desire for revenge reached its peak when he finally saw the Northern Palace. The Northern Palace was placed in an extremely deep strait in the middle of the vast sea. It was covered in mud that was several feet deep. Lord Vast Expanse forced the layer of mud away and saw the dark green shell of the Northern Palace below, and his heart finally calmed down a little. He used the demon power that he had accumulated along the way, and finally opened the entrance to the Northern Palace, and escaped in. The space inside the palace was extremely wide, and it was a circular hall. Inside the hall were countless jewels, and even some divine weapons and armor. But the most important thing was the body in the 10,000-year ice coffin in the middle of the hall. He looked like a sturdy man, but his appearance was ugly, with small eyes and a big mouth, and he looked somewhat like a fish. His skin was green and full of sarcomas. This was his body before he was conferred the title of Lord Vast Expanse, a Taowu. Although Lord Vast Expanse's body wasn't handsome, it could barely be called heroic. After 1,000 years, the vast Dragon King had long gotten used to his appearance. But now that he saw the ugly face in the ice coffin, he suddenly felt a wave of disgust. He held the coffin with his hand and was silent for a long time. After a full quarter of an hour, he slowly exhaled. His figure flashed. The Lord Vast Expanse in the coffin opened his eyes, and with a bang, he punched the coffin lid with both fists and roared, "Li Yunqin, I swear I will take revenge." His roar was impassioned and filled with endless anger. His voice should have reverberated throughout the hall, echoing endlessly. But the sound was muffled in the coffin. Only his mouth could be seen opening and closing, and his voice was as soft as the buzzing of a mosquito. Because when he held the coffin inside, he thought of many things. For example, since his soul was sealed with the demon soul and the sea and sky, then in theory, he was the embodiment of the sea and sky. As long as the sea and sky were still there, his demon power could slowly recover. Now he temporarily used this body. When he became as strong as before, he would escape from the Northern Palace and contact his old subordinates in the sea. There would always be some who didn't like Li Yunqin, to re-establish his own power. At that time, when Li Yunqin became the ruler of the sea, how could the lifeless immortal sect and the Shinryu not care about him? He could throw himself over. as long as he could take revenge. So what if he threw himself over? With these thoughts in his mind, he ran madly for 5 more days without any worries, and felt that he could succeed. Because of this, his emotions became even more agitated. He gritted his teeth and entered the body, becoming one with the body again. Only then did he realize that he had missed something. Anne's demon body was only at the transcendent level. The 10,000-year ice coffin that contained this demon body was a treasure that he had used all kinds of magical powers to seal. Now that he had almost lost all his demon power, how could he break it? He was trapped here by himself. Lord Howhan roared in anger. Unfortunately, he could only see his mouth. His voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. First there was a big change, then there was hope. But now he was unlucky again. Although he could temporarily be trapped here, and wait for the demon power between the sea and sky to slowly gather in his body, there would be a day when he would be able to escape. But he didn't know how long it would take for him to return to the profound stage. Was it a year? Or 100 years? Or 1,000 years? Lord Howhan's anger and resentment made him want to explode. But what could he do? He could only roar a few more times in despair, barely venting his anger. After a while he finally calmed down. He thought there might be a way to help him escape. But at this time, in an extremely secretive palace in a strait in the depths of this vast sea, he heard the sound of knocking on the door. The ice coffin was heavy. Originally, it was difficult to hear from the outside, and it was also difficult to hear from the inside. But at this time, the knocking sound was so clear that Lord Howhan thought he was hallucinating. First, there were 3 dang 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 sounds. After 2 breaths of time, there were 3 dang 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 sounds again. Then there was a voice. Hello. The person who knocked on the door asked politely, "Is there anyone at home? Please open the door." The voice was gentle and clear, so it shouldn't be annoying. But when it fell into Lord Howhan's ears, his scalp went numb, and he was scared out of his wits. Every pore on his body was covered in a cold sweat. It was Li Yunxin's voice. Lord Howhan's body froze in the ice coffin, not daring to move. Even he himself didn't know why he did this. It seemed like it could make the person outside go away. But the knocking sound was heard 3 more times. "Lord Howhan, don't hide inside. I know you're at home." Li Yunxin's voice sounded cheerful, as if he was in a good mood. "If you have the guts to surround me, why don't you open the door?" He began to knock again. Every time he knocked, the whole palace shook fiercely. While knocking he said, "Open the door, open the door." The pitiful vast Dragon King had just managed to catch his breath, and was starting to have some lofty aspirations. But he accidentally trapped himself in the ice coffin, and then this Li Yunxin came to find him. The fire in his heart was extinguished as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head. The palace was shaking violently, and the ice coffin was shaking along with it. The treasures in the palace were rolling all over the floor, almost burying his ice coffin. After a dozen breaths of time, he finally shouted, "Li Yunxin! Li Yunxin! Why do you have to force me? I've already fallen to this state." His voice was still sealed inside the palace. But Li Yunxin, who was outside, seemed to hear it clearly. But Lord Howhan felt that the whole palace began to move up and down again, as if the Devil's Star was holding the whole northern palace in his hand and throwing it back and forth. Lord Howhan is really lenient with yourself and strict with others. When you want to kill me, you laugh. But when I want to kill you, you pretend to be pitiful. Li Yunxin through the palace for a while, and his voice suddenly became cold. "Don't be so shameless. Open the door. I have something to ask you." He couldn't escape no matter what. Lord Howhan stood up and shouted, "If you have something to ask, ask. I'll tell you everything. As long as you let me go this time, I'll tell you everything. Didn't we fight because of Shinryu and lifeless immortal sex provocation? It's not like we have to fight to the death." These words seemed to have an effect. Li Yunxin was quiet for a while. After a while he said, "That's fine, I'll ask you first. How did Shinryu seal you in the first place?" He agreed so straightforwardly that Lord Howhan was stunned. But now, he was like a fish on the chopping block, and his only hope was in Li Yunxin's will. He hoped that he would really leave after asking clearly, so that he would have a chance to redeem himself in the future. After thinking for a while, he said, back then, I was just a pawn. That Shinryu found me and said that I was talented and had great potential. So he taught me a set of techniques. Before he could finish, the whole palace shook again. But this time, it wasn't just being thrown up and down, but something sharp was being chiseled. He hurriedly shouted, didn't we agree? You're not telling the truth. Looks like Lord Howhan won't shed a tear until he sees the coffin. Li Yunqin said coldly, Chu Liao Dragon King and Dang Dragon King didn't mention any techniques. Are they lying, or are you lying? Why don't you confront them face to face? They said it. You caught them too. Lord Howhan shouted. Where are they? I chased them for 2 days and caught them. Li Yunqin said calmly. I should have caught you on the 3rd day. But those two are too cunning and don't like to tell the truth, just like Lord Howhan. That's why I wasted an entire day to ask them. Then I scattered their souls. Lord Howhan, if you also want to taste the feeling of having your soul scattered, feel free to spout nonsense. In the end, I'm just here to listen to your words and verify their words. Life and death are decided by a single thought. It's all up to you. Lord Howhan Dragon King was silent for a long time, then said, Then, you'll really spare my life? Li Yunqin said calmly, I've even spared that Qin Fengzi's life. Why wouldn't I spare yours? I've always been a man of my words, don't worry. Speak. After a while, Lord Howhan Dragon King said, Fine, I'll speak. In the end, you'll still have to fight against that Shinryu. No matter what I do, I'll be happy no matter who kills each other. Then I'll tell you, if you want to go to Dragon Island, you might not be able to meet that Shinryu. That Dragon Island isn't a normal place. Shinryu's thaumaturgy on Dragon Island isn't something you or I can imagine. At that time, she chose me and brought my soul to Dragon Island. What's the inside of Dragon Island like? Do you think it's really an island? Lord Howhan laughed. It's only the size of a palm. It might not even be as big as the palace where Lord Donghai discussed business. Shinryu lives alone inside the seal. When I went there, I first saw an empty room. But Shinryu had to use her thaumaturgy to go to another place to see her. After that, my soul was refined and I obtained the profound realm's thaumaturgy. At that time, I didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, so I tried to break that seal. What was the result? That seal isn't something that a thaumaturgy can break. At this point he paused, as if he was waiting for Li Yunqin to ask what the empty room looked like. But after a while Li Yunqin asked, Then what does the place where Shinryu lives look like? Lord Howhan paused, a little surprised, because Li Yunqin's question had hit the nail on the head. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.